Welcome back to part 4 of What If Naruto Was Told About the Secret of the Shadow Clone Jutsu. Please make sure to like and subscribe as it motivates me to make more videos in the future, and as always, link to the fanfiction is in the description. Chapter 10. Calm Before the Storm. The next morning saw Naruto getting up bright and early, making some breakfast in the kitchen while everyone else slept. He flipped the pancake currently on the frying pan, while at the same time put a few spices on the sizzling pieces of bacon that was in the other pan. Having been cooking for nearly a month, he had gotten good enough to make a fairly decent meal. Nothing extravagant, but now he could eat his food and actually enjoy the flavor, rather than eat his food and wanting to gag. Normally Naruto would have had a clone make him breakfast while he got ready to start the day. Since he had started taking his training more seriously, he had found himself having less time, but this was special, at least to Naruto it was. He was making for someone else, not just himself, and for whatever reason, felt that it would not be the same if a clone made it. It was a pretty odd notion for him, considering he had no clue why he felt this way, but he had never been one to question things like emotions and feelings, and usually just went with the flow when it came to these things. And so, here was making breakfast. When all the food was done, he put it in a container before sealing it in a blanket he had gotten from a closet, in a scroll. Putting the scroll in his pouch, Naruto hurried out of the door and began making his way towards the clearing that he was going to see Haku in. Haku put on her yukata after she finished taking a shower, this time not wearing the chest bindings she had worn to conceal herself with. She looked in the mirror for a moment as she grabbed her brush and began to comb her hair. As she did, she thought about why she was doing this. Not going to see Naruto, her mind was clear on that. Zabuza had always told her to know thy enemy to allow for an easier victory, though she was sure he was just quoting from someone else. The man may be a skilled shinobi, but he was nowhere near intelligent enough to come up with a saying like that. No, what she was wondering was, why was she getting so dressed up? She often took care of her appearance, as evidenced by the blemish-free skin and silky black hair. But she had never before bothered to truly comb her hair other than the necessary times she needed to get knots out. Nor had she worn makeup before, something she was now wearing, though it was really just a hint of lipstick that she had found in her bag for the times she had to go somewhere in disguise to gather information for Zabuza when he asked her to. She shook her head as she realized that thinking about it wasn't going to help. Finished with her brushing, Haku stood up and left her room. Naruto turned around and grinned as he saw Haku walk into the clearing. Hey Haku-chan, how are you doing? He blinked when he noticed that her chest was decidedly larger than last time. Now, having spent as much time as he had with Anko, he was now well aware of the female figure, so it was not a surprise that he had noticed this rather easily. However, since Haku had been wearing her bindings yesterday, Naruto had not even noticed them before, and the difference was extremely noticeable. Haku, who happened to take notice of where he was looking, blushed and, despite being fully clothed, covered her chest. You know, it's kind of embarrassing when you look at me like that. Huh? Naruto looked at her face before his eyes widened as his face took on the hue of a tomato. Oh, no. I was surprised because of yesterday and all. And Haku giggled as Naruto got completely flustered, her embarrassment fading a tad as the blonde continued sputtering out excuses. It's okay, I suppose it would be surprising. I usually wear chest bindings to hide them. Oh, Naruto said in realization. So, how about we start again? He asked sheepishly. How are you doing? Haku brought a hand to her mouth as she giggled from Naruto's behavior. I'm doing well, thank you. And what about you, did you have a nice sleep? Naruto grinned. Yeah, it was good, better than sleeping out in the woods like I did last time we met. To be honest, I think sleep is overrated. The blonde grinned for a moment, though I did have some fun yesterday, beating the crap out of Sasuke Tem. Haku blinked at the blonde and tilted her head slightly. Sasuke Tem. Yep, Sasuke Tem, the spiky-haired shinobi gave a grin. Who's that? Naruto looked at her strangely for a second before remembering that she did not know who his teammates were, having never met them before. Sasuke is one of my teammates. All Konoha ninja operate in 4-man cells, 3 genin and a jonin. Sasuke Tem is one of the other genin on my squad, and let me tell you, the prick is a real piece of work, though he was surprisingly docile after our training. Of course it could have been because Sasuke had been far too tired to actually get angry, not that it mattered to Naruto. Haku giggled a bit before getting curious, so, why would you beat the crap out of your own teammate? Training, Naruto chuckled a bit, I was helping him with his tree climbing. Tree climbing? The raven-haired girl asked in a voice that was a mixture of idle curiosity and awe. She knew what tree climbing was, of course, she could do it too, but appearances had to be kept in order to stave off any suspicion that Naruto might gain. Yeah, it's an exercise us ninja do. Naruto thought about the best way to explain it. Basically we ninja use an energy called chakra for all of our cool jutsu, by channeling chakra to the bottom of our feet, and this allows us to climb up a vertical surface. That sounds pretty amazing, Haku commented. I suppose it is, Naruto said before grinning. I remember after I had helped him get all the way to the top. He looked so smug, thinking he was all badass. I had to burst his bubble by telling he hadn't mastered the technique until he could fight on a vertical surface for 1 hour as if he was standing on a horizontal one. Naruto smiled as he looked up at the sky and remembered the beatdown he had given Sasuke. I remember after that Sasuke was pretty pissed for a while. That look on his face was priceless, he looked so disgruntled. Haku suggested when she noticed Naruto having some trouble finding the right word. Nah, I'm sure he was disgruntled. But he really just looked constipated, Naruto said as he reached into his kunai pouch. Haku tensed when she saw his action but covered it with a giggle. Well, that type of training does sound pretty hard. Naruto nodded as he pulled out a scroll. Yeah, it can be. I remember when my friend Anko was teaching it to me. Naruto shuddered as he laid the scroll on the floor and unrolled it. She had me run across a single tree while she threw kunai, shuriken and snakes at me, while laughing. She sounds kind of crazy, Haku commented as she watched him channel some chakra into what she recognized as a containment scroll. There was a small puff of smoke as the contents were unsealed, and Haku saw a container of steaming breakfast, pancakes, bacon and a pitcher of orange juice, all of it laid out over a blanket. Breakfast? Haku asked in surprise. She had not expected him to do something like this. It was oddly heartwarming. Naruto looked up and gave her a sheepish grin as a small blush spread across his face. Well, I thought, since I asked you to meet me here and all, it would only be proper that I make you some breakfast. He looked away as he finished, a small blush spread across his face. Haku also found herself feeling a little flustered as a tint of pink reached her cheeks. Thank you, she said, smiling as she sat down. No problem, Naruto grinned at her, handing her a plate as he put some food on it. Haku accepted the plate and watched as Naruto dished himself some food as well. She looked at the food for a few moments, not ruling out the possibility of the food being poisoned. Such a tactic was often used among ninja when doing assassinations. Usually ninja would do this when their mission was to assassinate a small-time thugs or merchants, since they would not have enough money to afford someone to check for poisons. This meant that there was a good chance that hers was. However, she did not think Naruto was the kind of person to do that. Aside from the fact that there was no way he could know who she was, he seemed far too kind-hearted to use such an underhanded tactic. Sometimes you're too soft, Haku. Like me, Haku thought as she remembered some words Zabuza had said whenever she refused to kill her opponents, something she still could not do to this day. It was the one area she felt she had failed her master. She had never been able to kill anyone, it did not matter if they were enemies or not. In battle she had always just knocked her opponents unconscious, that way they could complete the mission without needless death. You okay? Asked Naruto as he noticed the odd look on Haku's face. Why aren't you eating? Is it bad? He hoped it wasn't bad, but maybe his clone's cooking skills hadn't passed over to him. That would really suck. All that time they spent cooking and others still can't eat it. Huh? Asked Haku before she realized what Naruto had said. Oh no. She picked up her fork and began to grab a decent-sized piece of food with it. I was just thinking about something. Not wanting to be rude, she took a bite. The food wasn't amazing or anything, but it was good. It's good, she complimented, taking another bite of her food. You think so? Naruto asked as he rubbed the back of his head in a sheepish expression. I only just started cooking a month ago, so I wasn't really sure how good I've gotten. Well, you don't need to worry, Haku said with a smile. It's definitely good, especially considering you've only started cooking for a month. A little more practice and if you didn't want to be a ninja, you could end up being a chef. Naruto put a hand to his chin in mock thought. Now there's a thought. Maybe I could work at Ichiraku's if I ever decide to retire after being Hokage. Ichiraku's? Asked Haku in curiosity, having never heard of such a place. What's that? Naruto looked up and grinned. Only the best place in the world. The very place that makes the ultimate food of the gods, and Kami's gift to man. Haku giggled a bit as she saw fire light up in Naruto's eyes as he spoke of a place that obviously sold his favorite food. And what food do they make? She asked. Ramen, of course. Naruto shouted as he held a fist up to his face. There is nothing better than the noodle goodness that is ramen as it slides down your throat, or the broth that tastes of heaven while you drink it. Ramen is the gift that Kami has bestowed upon man, in order to grant us unworthy mortals a small taste of heaven before we die. Ramen is the food of the gods. Haku's sweat dropped a bit at the boy's obvious obsession for the unhealthy noodles. Sushi's better, she said with a shrug. What? Naruto shouted as he looked at her with a shocked look. How could you possibly think that rotten fish could be better than a gift that Kami herself bestowed upon us? Sushi is not rotten, Haku shot back with a glare. And it's far better than those disgusting and unhealthy noodles you eat. She gave Naruto a smirk. It also doesn't make me short. Hey, I'm not short, Naruto shouted. How dare she insult him for his height? Ever since he had entered the academy, Naruto had been the shortest person in class, so one could imagine that he may be a little oversensitive about the subject. I've grown a whole 2 inches since he paused for a moment before his cheeks burned, with embarrassment, since I started eating things other than ramen. Haku giggled before it turned into a laugh. Naruto scowled a bit as Haku lay on her back and held her stomach, trying to regain her breath. It's not funny, Naruto mumbled in embarrassment. So what if it makes me short? It's still the food of the gods, he said to himself, reaffirming his belief in ramen. I'm sorry, Haku apologized as she struggled to get herself under control. But you have to admit, it was funny. She sat up and looked at Naruto with a smile. Naruto tried to glare at her Uchiha style, but ended up giving her a sheepish grin. Yeah, I guess it was. They continued eating for a while in silence. Normally Naruto would find any kind of silence uncomfortable, even with his recent changes in personality. Whether it was the sound of his clones shouting out jutsu, or his own sarcastic remarks while training, or Enko's sarcastic remarks while she was beating the crap out of him, Naruto always needed some kind of noise. Yet the silence here was oddly comforting, as if he didn't need to have any noise around Haku in order to be comfortable. It was perplexing. So this Ichiraku you mentioned, Haku started, getting the blonde's attention. Are the people there important to you? Yep, Naruto said with a grin. In fact, they were the first of 3 people to ever become precious to me. His grin faded into a small frown. I'm not well liked in my village. Haku's ears perked up when she heard that, as well as catching the hurt in his tone. For some reason, people hate me, and I never knew why. He decided to leave out the part about having a 9-tailed rampaging fuzzy sealed inside of him. After all, it was supposed to be a secret. He shook his head and continued, they were some of the first people to look at me like I wasn't some kind of monster. I remember they would often give me free meals when I didn't have enough money to buy food. Haku looked at the blonde next to her wide-eyed. The tone of his voice, the way it sounded so helpless. It was the exact same tone she herself had before Zabuza found her. It was then she realized why this boy had reminded her so much of herself. A part of her should have realized it sooner, and was now berating herself for having not seen it. She looked into his eyes and saw the same pain she herself had felt before she was given a purpose. The pain of loneliness, the feeling of having people hate you for something beyond your control. The blonde had the same eyes that she had. I had people very dear to me once, a long time ago. Naruto looked over at Haku in surprise as she started talking. My parents. I was born in a small snowy village in Mizu no Kuni. My parents were very kind people, and I was happy. But, when I grew up and began to learn the ways of the world, something happened. Naruto noticed Haku's expression getting depressed. You don't have to tell me something like this, just because I shared some of my past with you. He told her as he placed a hand on her shoulder. Haku looked up and her eyes widened as she realized what she had just been about to tell him, something. that only Zabuza knew of. She was about to heed his advice and stop, but for some odd reason felt compelled to tell him. Like there was some kind of force that was pulling the words out of her mouth, compelling her to let the blonde know of her past so that he would understand that he was not alone. No, she shook her head. I want to tell you, I've kept this in for so long, maybe telling someone will help. Naruto looked at her before nodding and offering a smile. So, what happened? My father, he had gathered a mob, and then he killed my mother. Naruto gaped at her as she told him that, not even able to truly comprehend what she was saying. Then, he tried to kill me. What? Asked Naruto, sounding like he didn't understand what she was telling him. The country of Mizu has had endless civil wars, and those with Kekkei Genkai came to be hated. Because of these clans with Kekkei Genkai bloodlines were used as weapons in countless battles. As a result, these clans were blamed for the cycle of war that had plagued the country. After the wars, these clans were forced to hide their Kekkei Genkai, or be willing to risk getting butchered by the hunter squads specifically designed to kill Kekkei Genkai clans. You have a Kekkei Genkai? Asked Naruto as he realized where this was going. Yes, Haku said, my mother was from one of the clans that carried a Kekkei Genkai. My father discovered this, because I had been careless enough to use it. A few tears came to Haku's eyes but she wiped them away. I had discovered my Kekkei Genkai's powers and had gone to show my mom. I had thought they were so cool at the time and wanted her to be proud of me. I remember her slapping me for it and telling me to never use it again. However, my father had also seen me use my abilities. I remember coming home one night and, my father, he had killed my mother and tried to. Haku had to pause as more tears came and she cursed herself for showing such weakness and in front of an enemy no less. Someone she shouldn't even be telling this to. She should not have even told him this much in the first place. Not only did she have nothing to gain from telling him, but he could use this information against her and Zabuza should he figure out who she was. She was shaken from her thoughts when Naruto came closer to her and wiped away the tears on her face. I think I understand, he said, looking at her with a look of understanding and compassion. He too had noticed the look she had when she was talking about her past. He had seen her eyes whenever he looked in the mirror, more often than he cared to admit and more often than anyone else would ever know. When the pressure of the villagers' hatred became too much he would gain those eyes, and considering how much hatred they had for the blonde he looked like that quite often. He shook his head and focused on the girl in front of him. You don't have to say any more. She knew she should follow the young man's advice, as there was no reason to tell him potentially harmful information. However, Haku shook her head. No. I want to. She took a deep breath before continuing. After that he had tried to kill me and I was forced to kill my own father and the rest of the mob that was with him. In my panic I had accidentally activated my Kekkei Genkai and used it to kill them. After that I ran. I ended up living on the street, scavenging for food from the trash cans, every day coming a little closer to death until I wanted to die. Naruto was not sure how, why or when it happened, but before he knew it, Haku had bowled him over, clutching to him like some kind of lifeline. For several minutes Naruto was too shocked to do anything other than lay there, his eyes widened to the size of dinner plates. Thankfully, his experience with Anko, while so completely different from this new situation it was not even funny, had enabled him to know what to do when a member of the opposite sex was hugging you. Either hug back, or make a smartass comment about the person hugging you being a child molester. Naruto decided to go with hugging. He wrapped his arms around Haku's shaking form, one hand going to the small of her back and the other going into her hair and running through it, much like how his grandfather figure, Sarutobi, would hug him when he was depressed. It's okay, Naruto said in a soft voice, let it all out. Naruto was not sure how long he had stayed like that, with Haku lying on top of him crying. Not that he particularly cared, it was obvious she had suffered even more than he had. If he knew his parents, and they had tried to kill him, he probably would have broken a long time ago. That she had survived was a testament to how strong her spirit was. I'm sorry, Haku sniffled out eventually, after getting all the crying out of her system. I don't know what came over me. In all the time she had been a tool for Zabuza she had never cried, and now here she was bawling her eyes out not only on some stranger, but an enemy she would have to do battle with when Zabuza recovered. Shaking her head, Haku sat up and set her hand in her lap, looking down at them as if remembering the past. "Sock," Naruto said with a small smile. Wanting to comfort Haku in some way, the spiky-haired blonde moved on instinct and brought an arm around the raven-haired girl's shoulder. Haku smiled as she leaned into the blonde, resting her head on his shoulder. Even knowing he was an enemy, she felt an odd sense of peace settle over her. Enough so that she had dropped most of her defenses and guards. Maybe it was the odd aura the blonde exuded, the strangely warm and comforting presence that he held. Or it could have been the similarities that she had seen between him and her, the look in the eyes and the general presence of someone who has lived a life of loneliness. However, whatever the cause was, Haku honestly did not care and just wanted to feel some form of comfort no matter how fleeting it was. They stayed like that for a while longer until Naruto asked a question. "So, do you have someone important to protect?" "I do," Haku said, closing her eyes as she continued resting her head. "However, I don't think he would understand anything, if I were to tell him this." She had tried once when he asked her about it. However, all Zabuza had done was give her this blank stare as if he did not understand. Not surprising considering he did not even remember his parents and most of his memories were bloody and violent, most of said violence being instigated by Zabuza himself. Yeah, she doubted that even smacking him in the face with her past would help him understand. "Ah," Naruto said, sighing. He leaned his head on Haku's. He closed his eyes and took a few deep breaths, enjoying Haku's scent. The only other person he had been this close to was Anko, and she smelled like blood, snakes, dango and sake. Not the most pleasant mixture of scents. "I should probably go," Haku commented after a while. They had been here for over an hour. No doubt Zabuza was wondering where she was since she had never taken this long to do something as simple as gather herbs, which was the excuse she gave him. Naruto nodded reluctantly and let go of Haku. "Yeah, I should too. Chances are my sensei is most likely looking for me by now." The two stood up and Naruto created a clone to clean the picnic supplies. The two looked at each other for a moment, unsure what to do. After all, what do you say when someone essentially just bared their heart to another? Haku was the one to move first, wrapping her arms around him in a hug. Naruto was a little embarrassed since Haku was at least 3 inches taller than he was, making him reach her shoulder. Not that it stopped him from hugging back, and enjoying the feel of someone hugging him. "Thank you," Haku said as she backed away and gave Naruto a smile. Naruto grinned as he rubbed the back of his head. "Hee, don't mention it. Getting hugged by such a pretty girl, I think I should be thanking you." Haku blushed at the compliment the blonde gave her. Having posed as a guy for so long, she had never received compliments from anyone. It felt nice. She managed to reduce her blush to manageable levels and smiled at Naruto. "I had a nice time. Maybe we can do this again tomorrow?" she asked. Haku knew it was wrong to be so close to the enemy, but he understood her, something she was sure that even Zabuza could not do. "I'd love to," Naruto said with a large grin, excited that she actually wanted to see him a second time, same time tomorrow. "Yes," Haku said, her smile widening a tad. "You're late," Kakashi commented to the blonde as he read his book with a disgruntled Tazuna at his side. "We've been waiting for over an hour, you know." Naruto shrugged as he walked up the two. "Sorry, I ran into one of Zabuza's accomplices and had to fight them to the death." Kakashi stopped reading and looked at him for a second. Naruto became nervous, wondering if he had seen through his half-truth. His wonderings were banished when Kakashi smiled. "Naruto, I'm so proud of you. Coming up with such an awesome excuse. I now feel like my time being this team's sensei have truly borne fruit." Naruto's sweat dropped. Yeah, let's go with that." "So," he grinned, "are we gonna get this show on the road or what?" "We would have done that an hour ago if you had been here," Tazuna mumbled. "I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear that and assume you said, gee, I'm glad he's not 3 hours late like Kakashi." Naruto shot back with a small glare. Kakashi shrugged as they began walking. "Well, don't worry, I'm sure if you work on it a little more, you'll be 3 hours late too." Naruto's face faltered at his sensei's words before getting up and run a hand over his face. "Sometimes I worry about you, sensei." 3 days later. It had been 6 days total since Naruto and the others had escorted Tazuna to Nami no Kuni, and in those 6 days the 3 genin had grown much stronger. Thanks to Naruto's torque training, Sakura had actually managed to increase her reserves a fairly decent amount. She had not mastered tree climbing, but had managed to at least double her reserves, though she still refused to do any physical exercise in fear of looking manly. Both Kakashi and Naruto had tried to get her out of that phase, however neither had any luck with it and eventually gave up. Sasuke had improved much more drastically than Sakura. While his reserves had not improved much, he had mastered tree climbing. He had also admitted, even if only to himself, that Naruto was alright. He had noticed that the more time he had spent with the blonde the stronger he got, and so did not complain or let his jealousy get to him too much. Not that it had changed the dynamics of their rivalry, Naruto still thought the raven-haired genin was the archetypical brooding temp. And Sasuke still believed that Naruto was a blonde idiot who was inferior to him, even if he knew that was not true as the two were fairly close to even when it came to their physical prowess in hand-to-hand combat. Naruto himself had probably improved the most. Not that anyone other than Kakashi would know that, since the blonde preferred to keep his training secret in order to avoid any jealousy on his team's part. He had managed to learn Shunshin, and could even do it without hand seals, giving him an edge when he needed extra speed. He had also mastered water walking and was now adding the leaf floating exercise to it. He had also increased his training seal to level 2. Of course he had found level 2 nearly impossible to move in for the few 2 days. Naruto had learned that in order to properly use the training seals he had to enhance his body with a constant stream of chakra so that his body could move when the resistance seals were on. Once he could move through a set of taijutsu katas at the speed he could normally, he would slowly decrease the amount of chakra he was using to keep himself moving. It was a slow-going process, especially because he had to sometimes take the seals off so he could get used to his body's speed without them, but he knew that once he started getting the hang of it, this form of training would allow him to use his training to its maximum effect. His elemental manipulation had unfortunately not gone as well as he had hoped. So far Naruto was only able to slice the leaf 1/3 of the way through. Thankfully some good did come out of the training, as all of his wind jutsu took less chakra to use and he had better control over some of the higher level ones. Things had also gotten a little better at the house as well. Inari, though still quiet, no longer made comments against Naruto. Sometimes the whiskered blonde had even caught the kid watching and following him when he trained, though the blonde had no idea what that was about. His relationship with Sakura had remained unchanged. She still seemed to either ignore him or tried to hit him on some occasions. Though this may have been on the account that Naruto had begun finding amusement in torturing the girl every chance he got with comments on her obsession with Sasuke. He and Tazuna got along pretty good. They would often tell jokes, and Naruto, in a bout of inspiration, had used his Tajukage Bunshin no Jutsu to make a 100-man strong workforce, much to Tazuna and the workers' amazement and delight. Kakashi also seemed to be treating him well, not that he hadn't always, but the man seemed to respect him more. Something Naruto suspected came from when he had made that excuse for being late. Naruto had also spent more time with Haku, who had come to meet him in the same clearing every day since they had met. The two had grown extremely close despite the short amount of time they had been together due to their similar experience they shared from their past. They had never spoken of the time Haku had mentioned her past, and in truth, they didn't need to, having come to understand each other well enough due to the similarities in their lives. Instead, Naruto would often regale her in tales of his pranks. How he had started his pranking career in order to get back at all the people who had ignored and made fun of him, though the main reason was a little darker than that. He would tell of her setting up stink bombs in restaurants, small explosives in toilets that would go off when someone flushed in the academy, painting the Hokage monument in broad daylight, and other pranks he had pulled throughout the years. Haku had never laughed so hard when he had told her some of them. If she were honest with herself, being with Naruto had been the most fun she had ever had. It depressed her to know that this happiness and content she was feeling with the blonde would end soon. Looking out the window from her room, Haku sighed as she finished getting ready to meet up with Naruto. It was the last day they would get to see each other as friends. Zabuza was now completely healed and had told her the plan to kill the bridge builder would commence tomorrow, which had been why she decided on having dinner with the blonde instead of breakfast like normal. Looking herself over in the mirror one last time, Haku tried not to let her emotions spill before she looked away and left her room. Going somewhere. Haku stiffened as she turned around and saw Zabuza leaning against the wall. "You're going to see that boy again, aren't you?" he asked. "How did you know?" Haku asked, knowing better than to lie to Zabuza. She had never been able to lie to Zabuza, not that she had ever tried to before. Zabuza looked at her before casting a careless shrug. "Since you came back the second time to get herbs, and had this odd glow about you." He put up quotation marks when he said getting herbs. "From what I understand, that only happens when a girl becomes a woman." Haku blushed a bit at the implication. We haven't done anything like that." Zabuza chuckled in amusement at seeing Haku actually get embarrassed about something for once. "There are other ways to become a woman." "And you would know?" Haku asked in a slightly snappish voice. "Whoa, looks like the claws are out today," Zabuza said, hiding his surprise with a laugh. "I don't think you've ever snapped at me unless I hurt myself." "I'm sorry, Zabuza-sama," Haku said, looking contrite. "Meh, it's fine," Zabuza replied, not really caring that she was a bit snappish. He paused and looked at her intently. "You know I don't approve of this. Getting close to the enemy unless you're going to assassinate him is not what a ninja would do." Haku winced and looked down. "However, I am not going to stop you, should you wish to see him." That caused Haku's head to snap up so quickly Zabuza was sure she would snap her head. "You won't?" she asked in a guarded voice. "You're not a child, Haku," Zabuza said. "You can make choices for yourself. I'm not going to stop you." He began walking away, but still managed to toss a parting comment over his shoulder. "Just be ready to not let your feelings get the best of you when we take down the bridge builder and everything will be fine." "Going somewhere, Naruto?" asked Kakashi as his blonde student left the dinner table and went over to the door. Naruto stopped and turned his head to look at Kakashi. "Just going to get some fresh air, sensei," he replied as he scratched the back of his head. "You said that tomorrow, chances are Zabuza will be healed." "I admit I'm feeling a little nervous." His other two teammates looked at Naruto in surprise. The old Naruto would have never admitted to being nervous about anything. Kakashi, however, narrowed his good eye as he saw through Naruto's lie, though what he was lying about Kakashi was unsure of. He decided not to press the issue for the moment and shrugged. "That's understandable, just don't stay up too late. We're waking up early tomorrow." "Bah, you worry too much, sensei." Naruto whined, waving his hand in the air. "I'll be fine, and even if I'm late I'll just tell Zabuza about the black cat that crossed my path, forcing me to take the long way around. I'm sure he'll understand." While everyone else in the room face faulted, Kakashi I smiled. "Perhaps, but I don't think he would get the joke like I would." "Whatever," Naruto said as he left. Walking into the clearing, Naruto saw Haku was already there. "Haku-chan," Naruto said with a smile as he walked up to the beautiful raven-haired girl. Haku gave Naruto a smile of her own as she gave him their by now customary hug. "It's good to see you, Naruto-kun." Naruto grinned as he broke the hug. "You make it sound like we haven't seen each other in years rather than yesterday with a tone like that." Haku just gave him a sad smile, something that Naruto noticed but ignored as he grabbed her by the hand and led her to one of the trees. Sitting down, Naruto leaned against the tree while Haku sat in between his legs, leaning her head against his chest. This had been something that they had started doing on their third meeting. It had been amusing when Haku had first began snuggling into the blonde, who had felt his face about to burst, something that the fake hunter ninja had found surprisingly amusing. Though after the first 15 minutes of blushing, stuttering and trying not to pass out from the feeling of having a beautiful young woman pressed against him, the whiskered blonde had gotten used to, and come to enjoy the cuddling they did. Naruto wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her as close as possible without making her uncomfortable as he put his head on hers. He took in a deep breath as Haku's scent filled him, letting out a sigh as he nuzzled deeper into her hair, causing Haku to giggle a bit. They stayed like that for nearly half an hour before Naruto broke the comfortable silence. "You work for Zabuza, don't you?" he asked. He felt Haku stiffen his arms and aimed to reassure her. "Don't worry, I don't care if you do." Knowing Naruto enough to realize that he was not the type to lie to her, Haku relaxed, melding back into Naruto. "Yes, when did you figure it out?" she asked curiously. "The moment you told me about your past," Naruto said, shrugging a bit. "A girl from Kiri with a Kekkei Genkei, and a former Jonin turned missing ninja from Kiri wanted for the attempted assassination of the Sandaime Mizukage." It wasn't all that hard to figure out. He complimented himself on reading up about Zabuza in the bingo book, otherwise he probably would have not even considered that Haku may have been working for him even after she had told him of her past. Despite being surprised that Naruto had known for this long and not done anything against her, Haku nodded. Or maybe she should not be so surprised, especially since she had known Naruto was her enemy from the moment they met and done nothing against him. How is Zabuza, by the way? Naruto asked. Haku sighed. He's fully healed. Then I suppose you'll be attacking the bridge builder tomorrow, Naruto hypothesized. Yes, Haku commented in a quiet whisper. I wish you wouldn't, Naruto said, his grip on Haku tightening a bit. Haku buried herself even deeper into Naruto, her head nuzzling into the blonde's neck. I know. She tried not to let her sadness get to her. Are you angry? No, Naruto sighed. I know you can't help it. This battle is necessary. Zabuza is your precious person. I know I can't stop you. Having spent as much time as he had with Haku, her ideals had been permanently imprinted and taken into his own ideals, namely her thoughts and beliefs on true strength coming from protecting those who are precious to you. You don't have to fight if you don't want to, Haku suggested. She knew it was unlikely, but she really hoped Naruto would not participate in the battle. Naruto smiled. I could, however, the people here that I care about. Kakashi-sensei, Tazuna Oji-san and his family. And even my teammates, much as they annoy me, have become my precious people. Naruto paused and tilted Haku's head so she was looking at him. He gave her one of the genuine smiles that only she, Enko and the Hokage had ever seen, just as you are. Haku bit her lower lip as a few tears spilled from her. She put her head back in the crook of Naruto's neck. You're going to make it that much harder for me to fight you. Sorry, Naruto apologized. Am I precious to you as well? He asked. Of course, Haku said in a whisper. Naruto bit his lip as he made a decision. Haku, he said, making said girl look up at him, I have something important I want to tell you. Haku looked at him for a moment and saw the hesitation in his eyes. She smiled at him, reaching out a hand. She began to gently stroke the whisker marks on the left side of Naruto's face. Kawaii, she thought with an inner squeal as Naruto began to lean into her hand and purr. What do you want to tell me? She asked. Naruto opened his eyes, which he had closed when Haku began her whisker stroking. He grabbed her hand to stop her, finding it difficult to concentrate due to her ministrations. Haku blushed a bit when she realized what her actions were doing to the blonde. Taking a deep breath, Naruto began to tell her something that no one in his age group knew. The day I was born, the Biju known as Kyuubi attacked my village. Kakashi looked at the three genin, all of whom were looking rearing to go. Are you three ready? He asked. Sasuke said, grunted with a smirk. He felt more than ready to prove his might as an Uchiha to everyone. With all of the training he had done, the raven-haired genin had never felt stronger. Yes, sensei, Sakura said, looking a little unsure of herself. Truthfully, she felt nervous and sick to her stomach, but she wanted to prove to her Sasuke-kun that she could be a valuable comrade. Naruto? Kakashi asked, looking at the blonde who had been uncharacteristically quiet. Something's missing, Naruto murmured before the proverbial light bulb snapped. Aha. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 24 clones appeared with a puff of smoke before spreading out around the house. Just in case that midget Gato decides to send some goons to deal with Tazuna's family while we're away, he explained at seeing the questioning glances. That's a very good idea, Naruto. Kakashi said with an eye smile. With the way you're all talking, it sounds like this Zabuza characters is going to come back right now, Tazuna said with a nervous laugh. Sorry, Kakashi replied, just being careful is all. So are you ready to go, Tazuna-san? Tazuna nodded. Of course, I want to get this bridge done. And with the Gaki's help it should be possible to finish the bridge in no time. You can count on me, ya binge-drinking old man, Naruto said with a two-fingered salute. That's not a very nice name, Tazuna complained with his head down. Naruto grinned, masking his nausea from knowing what's to come. Let's go. Is the ambush ready? Gato asked from his cell phone. On a small boat under the bridge, the Akuma brothers, Haku and Zabuza didn't bother listening as Gato began squawking for them to answer him. Are you ready, Haku? Asked Zabuza. Haku hesitated as she put on her mask. Yes. I need you to get in the game Haku, Zabuza said, we can't afford to get careless around Kakashi and his brats. I understand Zabuza-sama, Haku said. Zabuza looked at her while the Akuma brothers looked confused. Very well, let's get this show on the road. What is this? Tazuna shouted as the mist was covered in a thick fog. So much so that the only thing visible beside the bridge were the bloody bodies on it. Thankfully they were still alive. Tazuna ran over to one of them who was conscious and lifted the man up. What happened, Ed? Monster, the man choked out before passing out from blood loss. So he is back, Kakashi muttered. The mist began to thicken and Kakashi narrowed his eyes. Here they come. Defensive formation. Kakashi and the three genin pulled out their weapons and surrounded Tazuna, as the mist became so thick they could not see more than 10 feet in front of them. Kakashi-sensei. Sakura shouted as fear began to take her again, but she quickly steeled herself. This is Zabuza's Kurigaku no Jutsu all right, Kakashi said, wearily eyeing the surroundings even thought he could not see very far. Long time no see Kakashi, came Zabuza's disembodied voice. I see you're still with those brats, and look at that one, he's still shaking. That's just cuz, the Tem forgot to take a piss before we left and has to go real bad. Naruto said, keeping Sasuke from saying something cool. You wouldn't mind if he goes over the bridge before we get this party started, do you? Dobi. Sasuke grunted with embarrassment. Naruto baka. Sakura shouted with an angry blush on her face. Looks like that brat's still got a mouth on him, Zabuza commented, perhaps I should fix that. After he said this a dozen Mizu Bunshins appeared around the group. All of them holding the swords attached to their back. Hey Tem, Naruto commented with a smirk forming on his face, want to see who can kill the most first. You're on. Sasuke smirked. The two disappeared in a burst of speed, reappearing at their original positions several seconds later as all the Mizu Bunshin dispersed. I think it's 6 for 6, Naruto mumbled before turning to Zabuza and shouting, hey no brow Oji-san, think you can make another one for the tie-breaker. TCH. Cheeky brat, Zabuza muttered, appearing in the mist. They saw through my Mizu Bunshin. My how you brats have grown, it's a good thing I've got my backup with me. On cue Haku and the two Akuma brothers appeared within the mist as well. What the fuck? Didn't we deal with those losers before we got here? Asked Naruto as he saw the Akuma brothers. It looks like they managed to escape their confinements, Kakashi said, I thought the Anbu would have picked them up. I take it you want the blonde brat, Haku, Zabuza said. Yes, Haku replied. You're too soft Haku. Haku did not reply as she stepped forward and prepared to face Naruto in combat. It's a good thing both Naruto and Sasuke have grown. I didn't take the Akuma brothers actually escaping into account, Kakashi thought. I'm gonna have to talk to the Anbu about getting a quicker response. Sasuke, with your increased speed you should be able to deal with the Akuma brothers, Kakashi said. But be wary, last time they were caught off guard because the element of surprise they were going for didn't work. That won't be the case this time. Whatever, Sasuke said, he had wanted the hunter ninja. However 2-on-1 was just as good. He tightened the grip on his two kunai and charged. Naruto. I know, Naruto interrupted his sensei, I've got the hunter ninja. Kakashi looked at him for a moment before nodding. Good luck, he said before running off into the mist. Unlike the others who had ran off to fight, Naruto calmly walked away from Tazuna, moving several meters away from the bridge builder and Sakura to start his battle. Haku followed him, stopping when they were unable to see the others. Naruto-kun, Haku started. Don't, Naruto interrupted with a head shake. We both knew this was going to happen, I don't regret meeting you, even if this battle was inevitable. I feel the same, Haku said, her masked face looking down. Haku, do you think you can take off your mask? I want to see that pretty face of yours even if we're supposed to be enemies, Naruto said. Still the charmer even in battle, Haku replied, taking off her mask to see a tear-stained yet smiling face. Hey now, no tears, Naruto said, if you start crying, then I'll start crying and then I'll be considered a hypocrite for calling Inari a crybaby. Haku made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Sorry, she said, wiping her eyes. Don't be, I'm barely holding myself back from bawling like some snot-nosed brat here. You've got nothing to be sorry about, Naruto flipped his kunai into a reverse grip. It actually makes me feel kind of special, knowing you can cry for me even though we have to fight each other. Then I'm glad I can do this for you at least, Haku said. I suppose we should start, Naruto sighed as he closed his eyes. Yeah, opening them again. He looked at Haku and charged. Haku did the same and the two met in the center of the arena. Naruto's kunai clashing against Haku's senbon. The Battle of the Bridge had begun. Chapter 11, The Battle on the Bridge. Kakashi was just barely able to duck under a swing from Zabuza, the attack coming so close he actually felt the top of his hair get chopped off. He cursed as he realized his Sharingan was useless in this mist. He had only managed to catch a glimpse of Zabuza, and that was always right before he attacked. So far all Kakashi had been able to do was dodging the attacks when he felt them coming. That was a close one, Kakashi. Came Zabuza's amused voice. I've had closer, Kakashi replied nonchalantly while trying to come up with a plan to defeat Zabuza. Any thoughts on plans stopped when Kakashi rolled under a sword swing that came from his front, flipped over another swing that came from behind and sidestepped a third one that he caught out of the corner of his eye. He's using Mizu Bunshins to attack from multiple directions, great. You know, your brats don't stand a chance, Zabuza conversed lightly, as if they were not in a life-and-death battle. You guys may have gotten lucky when they ambushed you, but the Akuma brothers are a force to be reckoned with, and they won't be underestimating them this time. And Haku, well, Haku is my secret weapon. I think you're underestimating my genin, Kakashi said, ducking under another sword swing, before sidestepping the next. Damn it, where is he? Kakashi gave a mental curse, though he did not let his inner thoughts be known. After all, Sasuke is from one of Konoha's most powerful clans. Ah yes, the famous Uchiha clan, though I hear he is the last, Zabuza replied. However, even an Uchiha can fall, and that boy is still nothing more than a runt. Don't underestimate Sasuke, Kakashi said, trying to keep him talking so he could find him through hearing. He's not one to be trifled with. As for your secret weapon, I'm afraid Haku has met his match. Despite not looking like it, Naruto is the strongest of my genin. He won't be taken down so easily. Zabuza snorted in amusement at the man thinking some brat could possibly contest with Haku. Though in truth he knew that she would be unable to actually kill the kid after spending nearly an entire week sneaking out of their base just to see him. I think it's you who underestimates their chances for survival. And don't think I haven't noticed what you've been doing. I know how to project my voice, trying to find me with your ears isn't gonna work. Also that Sharingan of yours is useless, since I am a master of Muon Satsujin Jutsu I don't need to use my eyes to fight. Shit. Kakashi swore as he was forced to duck roll away from another sword swing. He should have realized this battle would not be the same as last time. He began dodging more attacks as he tried to come up with a new plan. Sasuke ran at the two Akuma brothers. The demon's brothers smirked before Guzu, the older brother shot right, and Mizu, the younger brother went left. Sasuke was forced to stop as he tried to keep both of them in his sights. It didn't work as Mizu came in behind Sasuke, making the raven-haired genin roll left. When he came up, Guzu was in front of him, slashing at Sasuke with his clawed hand. Sasuke jumped up and managed to kick the claw away with his left foot, at the same time he spun around and smashed his other foot in Guzu's face. Guzu stumbled back and glared at Sasuke, a lucky shot. Sasuke said with a smirk as he charged back in. However, he had forgotten about Mizu who came in from the left and slightly behind him. It was only Sasuke's fledgling danger sense that allowed him to dodge, jumping back into the right. Mizu continued on, jumping over Guzu before turning around. The two then came at Sasuke in a crisscross weaving pattern, forcing the genin to try and divide his attention between them. Mizu came in high with a slash from his claw, while Guzu came in low. Sasuke managed to duck the high slash, block the low slash by using his hand to redirect Guzu's hand, placing it on the man's forearm and pushing it over his head. However, he ended up getting hit when Mizu continued on, jumping over Sasuke and kicking him in the face. Sasuke's head snapped back as he stumbled backwards a few steps, his nose now bleeding as he glared at the two. He began going through several hand seals and took a deep breath. Kaiten, Gukaku no Jutsu. A large fireball spewed from Sasuke's mouth, barreling towards the two. The Akuma brothers just smirked and began going through their own hand seals. Sweden, Tepudama, water release, gunshot. The two shot out two large cannonball-sized bullets of water, which combined and doubled in size. It struck the fireball and the two jutsu cancelled each other out and burst into steam that began to mix in with the mist, making it even harder for Sasuke to see. Said Uchiha was now forced completely on the defensive as the Akuma brothers used their impressive teamwork in the thick mist to attack. Sasuke just barely managed to jump back from another claw swipe, only to be forced away from a jab with another claw. He blocked a kick, but was hit in the face with a thankfully unclawed fist. On and on this went as the two brothers worked in perfect synchronization to keep the young Uchiha on the defensive, never giving him a moment's rest with their relentless attacks. Jumping back, Sasuke tried to gain some room to think of a plan. However, the two were not about to give him any breathing room. Guzu came in with a low kick, high kick combination. Sasuke ducked the high kick and then blocked the low kick, only to see Maizu come at him from the slightly behind and to his left. Gritting his teeth, Sasuke channeled chakra to the bottom of his feet like he would do with tree climbing, only this was to give him an extra boost in power and speed. Using Guzu's leg for leverage, he jumped up in a corkscrew-style twist, spinning until his body was parallel to the ground. The raven-haired genin brought one foot to bear on Maizu and smashing under his chin, the force of which lifted him a few inches into the air before stumbling backwards. Using the small distraction, Sasuke turned on Guzu, launching a feint with his left fist. When Guzu went to block, Sasuke kicked him in the leg, making Guzu wince and lurch slightly, allowing the raven-haired genin to smash his fist into the man's breathing apparatus. Guzu went stumbling back and Sasuke smirked. "Lucky shot," he asked with a cocky grin. "I think I'm getting the hang of this. Itachi, I'll catch up to you soon." "Grr. That's it. No more playing around." Guzu growled. "Maizu. Time to teach this punk a lesson." Maizu appeared at his brother's side and the two of them began to attack again, their moves even faster and more unpredictable than before. Haku and Naruto continued to clash against each other, using their speed to move around and dodge each other's attacks. Naruto would come in with a powerful and unpredictable combination, while Haku would use her speed to either dodge or redirect all of the attacks. Haku would come in with her graceful fighting style, aiming for vital points with her Senbon. However, Naruto was more than up to the task of fending them off with reflexes he had gained from fighting against Lee and Anko. The two seemed to be evenly matched. Haku had an advantage over speed and more experience, whereas Naruto was stronger, had an unpredictable style that Haku couldn't follow, and better reflexes. The battle looked almost like a dance, more beautiful than deadly as the two continued to clash. The only sign that it was otherwise were the even number of bruises on the pair's faces and the tears on their clothes. The two jumped back after clashing again. The battle had felt like it had been going on for an hour, when in truth it had only been 2 minutes. "Damn, you're really good, Haku-chan," Naruto said, his breathing only slightly heavy. "Thank you, I learned from the best." Haku held up her Senbon as she prepared to attack. "Yeah, no brows, Oji-san is pretty tall." He cut himself off as he looked out into the forest. Haku used his apparent loss of focus to close the distance between them, lashing out with a kick. Naruto barely had time to jump back and only just dodged her. "You shouldn't take your eyes off of your opponent, Naruto-kun," Haku said as she tossed a few Senbon at him. Naruto blocked them with his kunai before throwing it at Haku, who managed to catch it and throw it back, forcing him to dodge. "Sorry, my clone's just dispelled. It seems your midget of an employer sent some of his goons to try and capture Inari and Tsunami." Haku frowned in thought as she wondered what Gato was thinking, since that had not been part of the plan. Her thoughts were cut off as Naruto came at her. He lashed out with a high kick, forcing Haku to jump back. As she did, Naruto used Shunshin to get behind her. Haku only had time to notice Naruto disappear before he kicked her in the back of the head. Haku tumbled forward but changed it into a roll. Coming up, she saw Naruto coming at her. She blocked his right fist, redirecting the attack away from her. At the same time, she came in with a kick. Naruto managed to block it by bringing up his leg, but was caught off guard when Haku hooked her leg with his and pulled him into a punch. Naruto stumbled back, shaking his head to clear the cobwebs out of it. When he looked up again, his eyes widened as Haku appeared right in front of him. She aimed the Senbon in her hand at Naruto's neck, but the blonde was able to move out of the way, twisting his body just enough to let the Senbon holding hand pass before grabbing onto it and pushing it away at the same time. Jumping back, Naruto threw a kunai and went through several hand seals, kunai kage bunshin no jutsu. 10 more kunai appeared and headed towards Haku, who went through her own hand seals. She managed to create an ice mirror that formed from the puddle at her feet, said mirror being created in only a second. The raven-haired girl managed to step through it, and the moment she did, the mirror melted before the kunai could hit it. Naruto grabbed another kunai before whirling around and blocking Haku's Senbon. The two pushed against each other for a moment, using the small respite to breath. Seems were fairly evenly matched, said Naruto. He pushed against her Senbon a bit, and noticed that she moved back slightly, letting him know that in a contest of physical strength at least, he was the stronger of the two. It would appear so, but I have the advantage, Haku said, seemingly not concerned that the blonde was pushing her back. Oh? Asked Naruto, pushing Haku back a little more. Yes, Haku replied as she channeled chakra through her muscles to strengthen them and hold Naruto long enough to do what she needed. The first thing is we are surrounded by water, the second is you only have one hand. With that, Haku surprised Naruto as she used one-handed seals. Sensatsu Susho, death by 1,000 flying water needles. Haku stomped on the ground, causing the water on the bridge to shoot up before forming ice needles which charged at Naruto. Naruto used a shunshin to get away from the attack and reappear behind Haku, lashing out with a kick towards her legs in an effort to knock her off balance. However, Haku had already predicted that this would happen and spun around, swatting the leg away and sticking several Senbon needles into his joint. Hissing in pain, Naruto jumped back. Damn it, that hurts. Naruto grunted as he pulled the Senbon out of his kneecap, wincing even more as he felt it heal. That was a low blow, Haku-chan, Naruto said, pouting at her. So is attacking someone from behind, Haku returned. Naruto winced. Touché. He jumped back and went through several hand signs. Well, since we're using jutsu now, allow me to show you one of mine. Fuden. K's Senbon. Several dozen Senbon needles made of wind formed in front of him before shooting off at Haku, who began to dodge and wave in between them. Naruto charged forward, hoping that the Senbon attack would distract her long enough that he could knock her out. His hope was dashed as she spun around while dodging the last wind Senbon, blocking his hand and redirecting it to the left before kicking him in the chest. Naruto winced a bit but was able to lash out with his own kick that caught Haku in the legs, sending her to the ground and forcing her to roll back. She flipped back up onto her feet at the same time Naruto regained his balance. The two paused for a moment, watching each other wearily for a moment, before they shot towards one another again. Kakashi cursed as he blocked and dodged several more strikes, channeling chakra into his kunai so that it could compete with the power of the Nuke Nin's sword. This was getting ridiculous. He had been unable to really catch more than a glimpse of Zabuza since the battle started, making his Sharingan almost useless. On top that, he was starting to tire. He had several dozen cuts along his clothing, though none of the attacks had gotten any more than a passing lance. On top of that, his Sharingan was draining a lot of his chakra. Kakashi knew that if he did not end this soon he would be in trouble. Getting tired are we, Kakashi? Zabuza said with a smug tone. Not at all, Kakashi shot back. In truth, he was getting really tired. Hey, we both know this battle is over, Zabuza said. Even if you could hold out, your brats won't last much longer. Kakashi was forced to dodge several more slashes from Zabuza's Zanbeitu before the man disappeared into the mist again. The Konoha Jonin waited for several moments before he felt it, a small fluctuation in the air current that told him the former Kiri Jade Jonin was coming in from behind him. Spinning around, Kakashi dodged that large Zanbeitu, letting it smash into the concrete where he had previously been, cracking it from the force of the blow. The copy ninja then stepped on the blade and closed distance with Zabuza, his kunai in a reverse grip. Kakashi plunged the kunai into Zabuza's neck, noticing that said ninja was leaking out water rather than blood. A second later, the Zabuza he had stabbed burst into water and Kakashi was forced to jump back as another Zanbeitu slashed into where he had just been. A moment later, the large sword along with the person holding it wavered in the mist before disappearing. You can keep thinking that if you want, Kakashi said, eyeing the mist despite knowing it would not do any good. And even if they're not, you forgot one important fact. Zabuza's voice seemed to echo from everywhere. Oh, and what's that? Asked Kakashi. My mission, was Zabuza's laughing answer. Mission? I don't get it. His mission is to, Kakashi's eyes widened, the bridge builder. Sakura stood in front of Tazuna with a kunai drawn. Her entire body was shaking as the three battles went on around her unseen. But just because she could not see them, did not mean she could not hear them. The Pinkett heard everything, from the clang of metal, the sounds of flesh hitting flesh. Grunts, screams. All of it was nearly enough to overwhelm the poor girl with fright. This is all too much, Sakura said to herself, her eyes darting back and forth as she tried her best not to let her fear get to her, and continue her job to protect Tazuna. I feel so out of my league, like I'm completely useless and at any second I could just die. On top of that, Sasuke-kun and even Naruto are fighting out there, while I'm just sitting here doing nothing. She was so worried about what could happen to her that she never noticed Zabuza appear behind her and Tazuna until it was too late. Zabuza hefted his blade off his back just as Sakura and Tazuna turned around to see him. As the giant Zanbetu was about to cleave into the pair, Kakashi appeared in front of them, using his body to shield the pair from attack. Too late, roared Zabuza as his blade came down. Kakashi's eyes widened as the blade came down. There was a splash of blood and Sakura screamed. Sasuke stumbled back as he received another fist to the face from Guzu. His breathing was getting ragged and his clothes were torn and ripped from the many close calls he had with the pair's poisoned gauntlets. It seemed they had been toying with him. After that second punch Sasuke managed to land, the two had seemingly turned up the heat. Now they were nearly twice as fast, twice as vicious, and had used it to their advantage, turning Sasuke into what amounted to a glorified rag doll. Sasuke rolled out of the way of another attack, moving into a series of flips, knowing from experience that Mizu would be there to attack him from behind. As soon as he landed on his feet he was forced to dodge to the left, but ended up running right into Guzu, who hit him in the face. Sasuke shook his head and jumped back as Mizu came towards his position. He would have thrown several kunai, but Guzu appeared on his left and came at him with his clawed hand. Sasuke was forced to backpedal right into Mizu and only barely managed to dodge the claw swipe he sent. Damn it! Sasuke cursed as he dodged another attack, only to be knocked back by a kick to his chest. Sasuke skidded across the ground before pushing himself up. How am I supposed to beat these guys if I can't even follow their movements? They mask each other so well that I can't predict them. As Guzu came in with another lunge, Sasuke tensed and timed his attack until the last second. Pushing the clawed hand down, Sasuke used it to jump over Guzu and smash his foot in the Chunin's face. Landing on the ground, Sasuke had no time to celebrate as he was forced to dodge Mizu's relentless attacks. I've got to concentrate, Sasuke thought as he tried to focus on the pair, to see their movements and react accordingly. They're fast, but if I can just see their movements and predict where they're going to be next, I can beat them. Sasuke watched Mizu's attacks and tried to follow them. The man came in with a claw swipe that the raven-haired genin managed to dodge by spinning on the balls of his feet to the left. As soon as he dodged, Guzu was right in front of him, set to impale the Uchiha survivor with his clawed gauntlet. Sasuke jumped up and over the claw, using one of his hands to give him an extra push skyward by planting it on the gauntlet. Landing on his feet behind Guzu, Sasuke saw Mizu already coming at him. As the younger brother came in with a claw swipe, time seemed to slow down for the raven-haired genin. Everything became much clearer and he could pick out all of the little details on Mizu. From the way the small details of the missing Chunin level ninja, to the small twitches and muscles movements as he came in. Sasuke also noticed a small flaw in the man's attack. Sasuke waited until Mizu was attacking him with another claw swipe and this time, ducked under a punch. Getting inside Mizu's guard, Sasuke managed to nick him with a kunai. Though Mizu was fast enough to not get too hurt, getting only a small cut on his torso. Sasuke panted as he eased off his attack. It was only for a moment, but I managed to see his moves. I'm getting the hang of this. Mizu jumped back as Guzu came up to him. You alright, brother? The older one asked. Mizu nodded. Yeah, he just nicked my side. Still, we can't let him get away with that. Guzu yelled. The two shot towards Sasuke again, but this time it was just a little easier. Sasuke managed to block Mizu's next punch, dodged Guzu's kick, and then he jumped over the foot from Mizu. Using the foot as a springboard, Sasuke jumped up and smashed one foot each into the two Chunins' faces by doing a small split kick. Flipping back, Sasuke landed on the ground and smirked. I can see their movements now. Damn, is it just me, or is that kid getting better? Mizu asked, getting confused. They had been pulverizing this kid just a few seconds ago, but now it felt like the kid had suddenly gotten this huge leap in ability. I think you're right, Gozu said as he stared at Sasuke, frowning, not that it could be seen beneath his breathing mask. Though I don't know how with his eyes bleeding like that. Did you get him? I'm bleeding, Sasuke questioned as he ignored the rest of their banter. My eyes don't feel like they're bleeding unless. Sasuke looked down at the puddle at his feet and grinned. His eyes were now red with one tomo in the left eye and two in the right. He had the Sharingan. Naruto and Haku skidded back from yet another failed attack. They had been going at this for a while now, and even Naruto's legendary stamina was being pushed. Naruto had long since lost his cloak, and his shirt had several rips in it. Haku had likewise received numerous rips and cuts on her body, one of which had cut off the chest bindings she had been wearing. Something that had instantly caught Naruto's attention, causing his attention to move towards her chest. Noticing his distracted state, Haku launched herself at Naruto. She aimed a kick at his head that the blonde was barely able to dodge. However, he could not dodge the next kick that hit him in the face, sending him tumbling back. It's not wise for a shinobi to be distracted on the battlefield, Naruto-kun, Haku commented. Naruto grunted as he wiped away the blood from his already healed lip. Sorry, but it's not every day I get to see such a beautiful sight. Well, technically I see it all the time with Anko, but who's counting? Haku looked down and noticed that her chest bindings had been ripped up, revealing her mid-C cup chest, and there was a rip in her battle kimono exposing the lower part of her left breast. She blushed a bit before looking back up at Naruto. Pervert. I'm not, Naruto defended himself, I was merely saying it's distracting. Besides, I thought we already established your beauty when we first met, Tenshi. Haku blushed a bit but shook it off as she looked at the blonde with a small smile. Only you could say that in the middle of a battle, Naruto-kun. I figured as much. Naruto grinned and gave a careless shrug. It's just 'cause I'm awesome like that. They ran at each other again. Naruto came in with a low kick to the kneecaps, but Haku jumped over it and attempted to kick Naruto in the head. Bending backwards slightly, Naruto let the attack pass over his head. Turning around, he lashed out with a fist while Haku was in the air. But she managed to swat the attack away, landing on the ground and coming at him with a kick of her own. Naruto backpedaled, letting the kick pass him by a few inches. He stopped his reverse momentum, jumped forward and came in with a punch to Haku's face. The raven-haired girl swatted the attack to her left and tilted her head slightly to let the attack pass by. It was close enough that she could feel the rush of air as the blonde's fist brushed against a few strands of her hair. Closing the distance between her and Naruto, she managed to hit him in the ribs with two quick jabs. However, the attack cost her and she was unable to retreat in time to get away from the blonde's counter-attack, said counter being Naruto grabbing onto her head with both hands, and smashing it into his knee. Haku stumbled back and shook her head in an attempt to clear it. When she did, it was to see Naruto coming at her hard. He sent a kick, punch, elbow, knee combination at the raven-haired girl. She managed to bend backwards slightly to dodge the kick, letting it pass a few inches from above her face. She came back up and brought out her left hand, twisting her body at the same time as she pushed the attack to her left. Despite being overextended, Naruto used the slight forward momentum it granted to come in a little faster and launch an elbow at the girl's face. Haku had other plans, however, and ducked under the attack. As soon as she ducked, the blonde stuck out his knee and tried to hit her in the face. Realizing she could not block this attack and did not have the time to dodge, she put her arms in a cross guard, taking the attack. Haku was pushed back as Naruto's knee collided with her forearms, with said attack being forceful enough to send her backwards into a tumble. However, she managed to plant her hands on the ground before she completed her first somersaulted roll and pushed herself back onto her feet. As she landed, she saw Naruto coming towards her and began making several hand seals. Jutsu, Korikiri, secret technique, ice mist. Haku inhaled a deep breath before exhaling. As she did, Naruto noticed that the mist in front of her turned white and looked like the small water molecules were becoming crystallized. It only took a second for him to analyze what she was doing. She's freezing the mist by infusing it with her chakra. If I get caught in that, I doubt even Kyuubi will be able to heal the frostbite I'll receive. Not wanting to become a popsicle, he Kawaramied with a clone he had created when the Zabuza Mizu Bunshins had attacked them. The clone froze in his place, turning pure white as it became a crystalline structure. Haku ended the technique and waited for the mist to clear, before walking over to the now frozen Naruto. "I'm sorry Naruto-kun, I did not want to do this to you," she apologized. "That's all right." Haku's eyes widened as she turned around and saw Naruto right behind her. She was unable to dodge the blow to her face, however despite her surprise, she was still able to counter and catching his foot with her own as she stumbled back, forcing the blonde to catch himself when he got tripped up and make sure he could not counter-attack, allowing her some time to work out a plan. The point became mute as Naruto began a set of hand seals, Fuden, Kamikaze Seiken. Linking his fists together, the blonde thrust them out and a powerful blast of concentrated wind in the shape of his fist shimmered as it pushed through the mist. Haku jumped out of the way, feeling the air get displaced as she dodged the attack. But Naruto knew she would and had only used it as a distraction while he closed the distance between them. He managed to get in front of her and plant a knee into her stomach before she could react. The fake Kiri Hunter ninja gasped in pain as she coughed up a mixture of spit and blood as the attack folded her over Naruto's knee. However, Haku was not about to be outdone and latched onto his leg, using one of her own to trip him and send the blonde sprawling to the ground. Naruto's back hit the concrete with a small oomph from the whiskered blonde as the wind was knocked out of him. As he tried to regain his breath, he saw Haku throwing a punch at his neck with several senbon being held between her fingers. Rolling out of the way, Naruto was able to dodge the attack and pushed himself onto his feet several feet away from Haku. "This is getting us nowhere," Naruto muttered to himself. They were simply too evenly matched, and nothing they did seemed to affect the other for long. Haku seemed to be having the same thoughts. "He truly is a strong opponent. I really don't want to use this, but to help Zabuza-sama I have to." "You really are strong Naruto-kun," Haku said as she began more single-handed seals. "But I'm afraid that means I have to use my secret weapon on you." Makio Hyosho demonic ice crystal mirrors. Naruto watched as he became surrounded by a dome of ice mirrors. Haku stepped inside one of them and an image of her appeared in all of them. Naruto looked around at all the Hakus. "Well shit," he said as they all brought out senbon. "This is the end, forgive me, Naruto-kun," Haku said before all of the Hakus disappeared and Naruto found himself being hit by dozens of senbon at what felt like almost the same time. It was only because of his spars with Lee that Naruto was able to tell they were not at the same time, being maybe several tenths of a second from each other. Though with the pain he was feeling from getting stuck with several dozen senbon needles, he was unsure if that tidbit of information really mattered. "What the hell?" Naruto said as they all appeared in the mirrors again. "I could barely even see what happened. Are these copies of herself that are attacking me, or is this some kind of speed technique?" Naruto pulled out the senbon that he could reach and threw them on the ground. "I need to figure out what kind of technique this is so I can beat it." The Hakus disappeared again and Naruto found a dozen more senbon sticking out of him. "That is if I can survive this." Naruto dropped to his knees, wincing as he pulled out even more needles. "Please surrender Naruto-kun, I don't want to have to kill you," Haku begged, her voice not bothering to hide her emotions. "I don't want you to kill me either Haku-chan," Naruto winced as he stood up. "But I can't let Tazuna Ojisan die. I won't give up." Kai, release. Several seals spread across Naruto's skin, invisible to the naked eye due to the genjutsu seal on them, and all the weight in his wrist and leg bands dropped. Naruto felt about 150 pounds or so lighter, which was an almost accurate estimation of how much his weights weighed. "This should help," Naruto mumbled. While Haku had been fast, Naruto had been fighting fast opponents for several months now, one of whom was faster than Haku. It's time to get this fight really started. Haku was not sure what Naruto had did, but decided not to give him a chance to try something against her. She attacked. Sasuke grinned as he dodged another set of attacks. Jumped over Guzu and smashing a foot into the back of his head. This was getting much easier with his Sharingan. Now he could see all the attacks sent his way and predict them, even though it's incomplete, it's more than enough to deal with them. "You know I'm getting pretty bored here," Sasuke said with a smirk, feeling confident now that he had his Sharingan. Maybe you aren't as good as I thought you were. This battle's just getting started. Guzu shouted with false bravado. He and Maizu had been giving it their all for a while now and nothing seemed to work on the genin anymore. Sasuke smirked, moving into his Setsujutsuken interceptor fist of the Uchiha clan before giving them the "come on" gesture. As the two charged, Sasuke began following their patterns, using his Sharingan to track them both. So long as they did not move too far away from each other, he would be capable of keeping track of the two of them. Guzu was the first one to reach him, coming in with thrust of his clawed hand in the hopes of impaling the Uchiha heir. However, Sasuke sidestepped the attack as if he had known he was going to do this before he even started, grabbed Guzu's arm and kicked him in the face. Hard. Both Sasuke and Maizu heard the other Akuma brother's neck snap. Sasuke blinked as he saw the now dead body fall to the floor. "Brother," Maizu muttered before turning a glare on Sasuke. "I'll kill you." Sasuke broke out of his shock as Maizu closed in on him, already in his face and shoving his clawed hands towards Sasuke's throat. Sasuke's eyes widened as he acted on instinct, redirecting the hand and stabbing a kunai into Maizu's neck, killing him. Unfortunately for Sasuke, Maizu's forward momentum was not halted and the Chunin rammed into Sasuke, sending the two of them flying through the air. Sasuke hit the ground hard, his head smacking against the pavement of the bridge and knocking him unconscious as Maizu's corpse landed on top of him and pinned him to the ground. As Haku attacked, Naruto strained his eyes to see her, hoping to catch just a glimpse so he would know where the attack was coming from. He soon found her. She was nothing more than a blur that was closing in on the left. As soon as he found her, the whiskered blonde made liberal use of the Shunshin to get away from her Senbon attack. He reappeared several feet away, and saw the mirrors reflecting Haku before she disappeared again. Again Naruto used Shunshin to get away just in time, and continued this over and over until his eyes began to adjust to Haku's speed. Soon he could at least make out her form enough to see the limbs moving. Realizing that long-range attacks would no longer work on the blonde, Haku came in and tried to attack in close. However, this was exactly what Naruto wanted. Timing his attack, he waited until Haku was right next to him and launching an attack, blocking her Senbon before tossing a kunai at her. Haku was forced to swerve to the side, forcing her to slow slightly, and Naruto used the extra time that granted to get in front of her and hit her. Despite the hit and her shock, Haku was able to get back into one of her ice mirrors. "I've figured out your jutsu, Haku," Naruto commented as he looked at the mirror he saw her fly into. "You're not using clones, or any kind of illusion. You're bouncing from mirror to mirror, using the high speeds it affords you to move faster than most can follow. The copies in the other mirrors are simply the light reflected off the mirror you're in. So long as I can see when you and your reflections disappear, there is no way you can hit me." It's only been 5 minutes since he saw it, yet he's already figured out my attack, Haku thought in slight awe and worry. However, she did not let that show on her face. "That is very impressive, Naruto-kun. No one has ever been able to figure out my jutsu, and even Zabuza has trouble with it. We don't have to fight anymore, you know," Naruto said, his voice growing soft. "Please surrender, I don't want to fight you anymore." "I can't," Haku told him in a regretful voice, telling him that she did not want to fight either. "For the sake of my precious person's dreams, I have to fight." Haku shot out of her ice mirror, changing tactics as she went into the mirror above Naruto before shooting down at him. Naruto sidestepped the attack and tossed a kunai at Haku, cutting her across the shoulder. Gasping in both surprise and a bit of pain, Haku retreated into one of the ice mirrors. Or at least she would have, had Naruto not appeared right in front of her with a Shunshin and smashed a chakra-enhanced fist into her face. Unable to maintain the ice mirrors any longer, they shattered and fell apart. Haku went flying several feet back, rolling a bit before skidding to a stop on her stomach. Naruto ran over to her, gently rolling Haku over before lifting her up and holding her to him. "You okay, Haku-chan?" he asked in a worried tone. Haku blinked a few times before looking over at Naruto. "You beat me." "Yeah, I did, kicked your ass pretty good too," Naruto said with foxy grin. It dropped a second later. "Now we don't have to fight anymore, you can't fight anymore." "That's true, I'm nearly out of chakra from maintaining my ice mirrors," Haku replied. Her entire body was sore and she could not move very well. "Naruto-kun, my purpose is now gone. Zabuza-sama has no need for a broken tool. I need you to do me a favor, and kill me. Naruto's eyes widened until they looked like they would simply roll out of his head. What? Kakashi grinned underneath his mask as Zabuza disappeared back into the mist. Well Kakashi, looks like Haku was right, Zabuza commented. You rely too much on that eye of yours, and now that it's useless you're nothing. I wouldn't be too sure about that, Kakashi replied in a smug tone as he pulled out a scroll. Wiping some of the blood from his now cut chest with his thumb, he unrolled the scroll and spread the blood across it. Well Zabuza, this has been fun, but let's be honest, we're both busy people and I'm sure you would like to end this as much as I do. So let's end this. HMPH. Zabuza grunted, well that sounds interesting Kakashi. Show me what you can do. Kakashi smirked under his mask as he rolled his scroll back up. Slamming it on the ground he called out his jutsu, Ninpu, Doden, Suga no Jutsu, Ninja Art, Earth Release, Tracking Fang Technique. Seals spread out from the point of impact, the ground also began to tear up and move across the landscape, as if there was something moving under the ground. Whatever you're trying Kakashi, it's not going to work. Zabuza said, knowing that whatever Kakashi was going to do was useless. You can't figure out where I am. However, I now know where you are. What? If your eyes don't work then just use your nose, Kakashi said as he heard the sound of ground cracking. The mist cleared and showed Zabuza with several dogs latched onto them with their mouths. There was a giant bulldog latched onto his left shoulder, 2 dogs biting each of his legs, 2 dogs biting his thighs, 1 dog attached to his right wrist, another holding his zanbeitu down by the hole at the end, and lastly, a small pug hanging off his headband. That's what happens when you have your eyes shut in the mist, Kakashi commented, his tone smug and satisfied. This summoning is specifically for tracking down an opponent. When you cut me, I let you cut me so that I could get my blood on your weapons. These are my cute little ninja dogs. Their sense of smell exceeds that of all other dogs. You are the one trapped in my jutsu. Kakashi put a finger to his temple as he closed his one normal eye. The mist has cleared, and do you know what I see? I see your death. My future is death. Zabuza asked, scoffing at the silver-haired Jonin and seemingly not the least bit worried. Though Kakashi could see from the man's change in demeanor that he felt otherwise, I'm sick of your bullshit. Don't be foolish, your death is certain, Kakashi said. You went too far, your ambitions were too great. You abandoned your country and became a missing ninja, your story even reached Konoha. Your attempted coup d'etat and your attempt to assassinate the Mizukage failed. You were forced to flee the country and become a missing ninja with what little followers you had. You realized that in order to try again, you would need money, and so you ended up working for scum like Gato. Kakashi began going through several hand seals before putting one hand near the ground, the other holding that hand's arm in place. I won't end this with someone else's jutsu. No, you're going to get a taste of my very own original jutsu. Reikiri, lightning cutter. A burst of lightning sparked into his hand, crackling with repressed energy so potent it was visible. Look at that jutsu. Zabuza felt a trickle of fear at seeing the lightning shooting from Kakashi's hand. It's so powerful the chakra is visible, yet he holds it in his hands. You're too dangerous Zabuza. Kakashi's eyes narrowed at the man as he spoke. Tazuna-san, the person you are trying to kill is this country's courage. The bridge he seeks to build is this country's hope. Your ambitions will sacrifice too many people. That's not what a shinobi would do. I don't give a shit about other people. Zabuza growled as he tried to fight against the dog's hold on him, only to find their grip was solid and he could not more than a few centimeters. I have my own ideals and ambitions to fight for. And that, Zabuza, is why you will die, Kakashi said, his Sharingan eye blazing. Why you can't ask me something like that? Naruto shouted, why would you even think that I could kill you? What makes you think I could ever kill you? Just fighting you feels like I'm tearing apart pieces of my soul. I am nothing more than a tool, Naruto-kun, Haku said, releasing herself from Naruto's grip and standing on wobbly legs. Naruto was too stunned to do anything more than just sit there and stared at her. I am a tool that has now been broken. I can no longer help Zabuza-sama fulfill his dreams. Therefore you Mew, shut up. Naruto shouted as he gave her a glare that would have melted others. How dare you say something like that? If you're nothing more than a tool, then what did all those times you spent with me mean? Was that a lie? Are you telling me that you felt nothing when you were with me? That all those times we had spent together meant nothing to you? Naruto's shoulders dropped and his voice lowered. Were you simply using me to help Zabuza? He asked. Haku's eyes widened in shock. No. She shouted as she took a step forward. How can you think that? Everything I said was true. I loved being with you. Every minute we were together I felt safe, and content. I even spent time with you when Zabuza-sama voiced his disapproval. Don't even think that our time together meant nothing. I thought you were nothing more than a tool, Naruto said as he gave Haku a heated look, watching her flinch. Tools aren't supposed to feel, especially not for their enemy. And tools aren't supposed to aim for non-vital points that would only knock a person out. Haku's eyes widened as she realized he knew that was what she had been aiming for the whole time. You're not a tool, Haku-chan, you're a ninja, but ninja aren't just mindless tools who are used and then thrown away when someone feels they are no longer useful. But my purpose, Haku tried. If Zabuza can't see the value in having someone as amazing and willing to go to such great lengths to protect him as you are, then he doesn't deserve you. Naruto's eyes softened. If he can't see what's right in front of him, then you would be better off leaving. But, Naruto shook his head, interrupting the girl as she tried to give some flimsy excuse. You don't have to be his tool anymore, Haku-chan, he said, his voice soft, much like when the two would hold each other during their times together this past week. You can come with me, I'll treat you like you should be treated. I want to be with you, Haku. Despite having only met you this past week, you are my most precious person. Haku's breath hitched in her throat as Naruto said something like that. No one had ever told her that before, not since her parents had died. Haku was unsure what to do. She wanted to go with him, to be with someone who could understand her pain better than anyone else. But at the same time, Zabuza-sama gave me a purpose. What do I do? Haku, Naruto said as he held out his hand, please, don't do this to yourself. You hate killing, you hate all this running. I can give you a home, a place away from all of that. Please just come with me. Naruto, Haku reached out to grab his hand. However, as she did, she stopped, sensing that Zabuza was in trouble. She took a step back. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, I would love to go with you, but it seems I have one more purpose. Naruto's eyes widened as she went through a few hand seals. I am sorry, she gave him a brilliant smile. Know that even if I can't go with you, I will always love you. And with that she disappeared in a burst of speed, leaving Naruto to stand there too shocked to actually move. Haku, Naruto mumbled, staring wide-eyed at the spot that Haku had just vacated. Haku. Chapter 12. The sea dyed red. Kakashi stared wide-eyed as blood splashed across his face and clothing, his arm shoved elbow-deep in the person's flesh and moving out the back. He was so shocked that he could not even think of removing his arm from said person's chest, and instead watched as blood began to stain the cloth covering his arm. Everything seemed to stop in that single instance as Kakashi, Sakura, Tazuna and Zabuza all stared at Haku in shock, having had used herself as a shield to protect Zabuza and taken the silver-haired Jonin's assassination technique. None were more shocked than Zabuza himself, who could only stand there with his eyes wide and Haku's blood splattered all over his face. He had known of the girl's devotion to him, having been the one to take her away from the hellish life she had been living in Mizu no Kuni. But even he had not expected or even thought she would have taken her desire to protect him this far. He was so surprised that he could not even think of using everyone else's distracted state as an opportunity to kill Kakashi. Haku. The near animalistic scream tore everyone's attention away from Haku and towards Naruto, who had stopped running as soon as he saw his sensei's arm through Haku's chest. No, he mumbled before breaking out into a run. Naruto, Kakashi tried to say, only to be ignored as Naruto grabbed Haku, pulling his sensei's arm out of her and sinking to the ground and as he attempted to shake Haku awake. No, 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 no. Haku, wake up, Naruto shouted, his voice frantic and his eyes looking into her now dull ones. Come on Haku, you need to wake up. I need you to wake up. Don't, Naruto's voice chalked. Don't leave me, Naruto stared into Haku's eyes looking for any sign of life. Only to find them dull, lifeless, like what you would expect of a doll. No, oh Kami no, tears came from Naruto's eyes, even though he didn't notice. Not like this, I never wanted this to happen to you, why? Why did this have to happen? Damn it, Haku. The blonde's shoulders began to shake as sobs racked his body. Heedless of the blood that was pouring out of the wound in Haku's chest and began to stain his clothes, Naruto pulled the now still Haku closer to him, and began to rock back and forth as seeking, hoping to find that warmth that he had always felt from her before. It wasn't there. All he now felt was the fading warmth that she had held when alive, and it was soon replaced with the cold feeling of one who had just died. Naruto, Sakura mumbled, completely shocked at what she was witnessing and not at all sure what she should think at seeing the sight of the person who, even after his increase in intelligence and skills, had always seemed to be an idiot to her. Naruto, who had always been fairly cheerful, even with his recent changes, the boy had still carried that near indomitable optimism and enthusiasm. Now he seemed to be almost broken, tears were streaming down his face as he held onto the raven-haired kunoichi and was seemingly ignoring the world around him. His lips moved whispering apology after apology to the girl he was holding, even though she was no longer alive to hear them. The sight of Naruto breaking down so utterly was so foreign that the young pinkett did not know what to think. Her thoughts were broken away from the sight as she remembered someone else who had his own battle here on this bridge. Sasuke-kun, she mumbled as she stood and began her search for the Uchiha heir. Spinning around she went to search for Sasuke, and found him unconscious and heavily bleeding under the body of one of the now dead Akuma brothers. Sasuke-kun. She ran up to him and tried to push the body off of her crush, the rest of the world forgotten to her. The two Jonin-level ninja looked over at each other, each trying to determine if there was any real point in fighting anymore. A few minutes later, which were only broken by the sounds of Naruto's cries, the stare-down ended, and both nodded as a silent agreement passed between them that the battle was now over, at least for the moment. The two ninja turned their attention back to the distraught blonde. Thonk, thonk, thonk. The pair's heads snapped over to the end of the bridge to see Gato grinning at them, along with a large horde of thugs behind him wearing the same grinning expression only tinged with bloodlust, no doubt from the thought of killing the group here and then moving on to pillage the village. Look at you Zabuza, all beaten up and getting your ass handed to you by a bunch of brats and a scarecrow, Gato said with a smirk, feeling pretty confident now that the battle was ended and he had a large group of mercenaries behind him for backup. Gato, Zabuza growled, he was already angry at the death of Haku. He did not want to deal with this fat, greedy midget. What do you want? Such a temper Zabuza. Gato grinned that showed how much he was savoring this moment. I forgot to mention there's been a change in plans. You see, missing ninja like yourself are simply too expensive to pay for. I never planned on actually paying you. It's always been my plan to simply get rid of you after you did the job and were too weak to do anything. It's so easy to get rid of you missing ninja. You abandoned your village and now no one will come after me after I kill you. Hell, I usually get a bonus with your bounty when I hand you over. Zabuza growled at the man. I see, so that was how you always wanted to do this. Of course, Gato smirked, and now you're not going to be able to do a thing to my boys. PFT, Kiri no Kijin, more like Kiri no Koinu, puppy of the hidden mist. I doubt you could take down even one of my boys here, though I would be appreciative if you did at least try to kill a few of them. After all, while they may not be as expensive as you, they still cost me some money. Looks like my quarrel with you is well and truly over Kakashi, Zabuza grunted as he grabbed the handle of his sword and prepared for another battle. It does seem that way, Kakashi agreed, readying a kunai. He did not know how many he could take out with how exhausted he was, but he was not about to go down without a fight. Gato laughed as they prepared themselves. However, he blinked when he saw Naruto holding onto Haku. Oh, so the kid died That's too bad, I was hoping to kill him myself. There was a spike of killing intent that went unnoticed by everyone except Kakashi and Zabuza, both of whom turned their eyes towards Naruto who had looked up sometime during the conversation and was now glaring at the man. Hey kid, Gato shouted as he walked up to them, I don't know what kind of gay circus this is, but hold on a minute. The fat midget got a closer look at Haku. Despite the amount of blood covering Haku and the blonde holding her form protectively close, the fat frazzle-haired businessman could see something that he had not seen before due to the bindings Haku had been wearing. Now that they had come undone, he noticed she had quite a nice set on her. Oh ho, so he is in fact a she. Gato grinned lecherously, well now, I'm really depressed she's dead. I could have made quite the killing after I made her my bitch. Though, she is quite the looker, so maybe I'll give her over to my boys so they can at least get some fun in before her body starts to rot. So why don't you be a good little boy and hand the bitch's body over to me?" Naruto glared at the man through bloodshot eyes, his killing intent slowly rising. This monster was talking about having a bunch filthy pigs degrade Haku-chan's body. This person was the entire reason Haku was dead in the first place, for hiring her and Zabuza for this job. Without Gato, Haku would have never come here, would have never faced him in battle and would have never gotten hit with his sensei's technique. In the blonde's mind, everything that had happened to this point was that man's fault. "Kill them." Naruto blinked when he heard the voice from inside his mind. It had an odd inflection to it, the voice sounded like two people were speaking at once, though he could not tell who. "That man is the reason she's dead, kill him." Gato stopped a short distance away, not wanting to get too close to the two Jonin shinobi. "Hey! Are you deaf or something, you stupid fuck? Kill him." Naruto snarled as he looked back up at Gato, whose eyes widened as he took a step back in fear at the eyes he was now staring at. The eyes were no longer blue, nor did they hold any of the warmth they usually did. They were blood red, with a single black slit running down the middle. They were eyes belonging to a demon. "You," Naruto whispered, his voice was harsh and ragged, carrying such rage and unbridled hate that everyone, even Zabuza, could not repress the shudder that ran down his spine. "This is all your fault. Because of you Haku's dead. And now you want to desecrate her body. All of it, it's your fault. I'm gonna kill you." A powerful bloodlust and killing intent crashed onto the bridge, being so powerful that Gato had fallen on his ass and was crab walking to get behind his men. Meanwhile, a powerful red energy began to swirl around the blonde. The energy began swirling around him before shooting into the air to form a column of red energy, which lashed out around him in a violent manner as if it had a will of its own. The energy covered the area around and above him, and at the top the energy took a shape. It too the shape of a grinning fox head. "Is the seal breaking?" wondered a frantic Kakashi as he jumped away from the blonde, the red energy burning his skin. No. He realized, the seal is perfectly stable. It almost seems like this was supposed to happen, but I'll need to be careful since I don't know what Naruto will do in this state. "What is he?" wondered Zabuza as he was forced to jump away from the blonde, after getting his skin burned from being near the energy. Such bloodlust and unbridled killing intent far more potent than my own. This much intent shouldn't even be possible. The others on the bridge were not faring nearly as well. Sakura, who had been facing away from Naruto and trying to futilely wake Sasuke, had been unable to do anything more than pass out on top of the Uchiha. Her body was spastically twitching and drool coming out of her mouth. Tazuna was on his hands and knees, breathing heavily and unable to even move, since staying conscious from the feeling of power and bloodlust around was a challenge in and of itself. The thugs who were with Gato were all shaking, some were already on their hands and knees like Tazuna. A few of the weaker-willed ones had already passed out, and as for Gato, the man had fallen onto his ass, his entire body shaking uncontrollably as he lost all motor functions and had already released his bowels. His breathing was strained, and he could see images of his death at the hands of the blonde. Images of his head getting ripped off, of getting torn to shreds. Out of all the people there, the killing intent was affecting him the most, being the one it was directed at. Never before had he felt something so vile, and it was enough that he almost wished he were dead just so the feeling of his impending doom would stop. Within the swirl of energy, Naruto began to transform. His whiskers became jagged and thick, his hair stood up even spikier than before. Claws formed on both his hands and feet, and his canines turned into long fangs that jutted from his upper lips. Naruto gently set Haku down on the ground, caressing her face before he closed her eyes. Standing up, he stepped over her prone form as the energy coalesced around him. His head was down, shadows covering his eyes as his ragged breathing filled the air. Finally he looked up at the man who was responsible for Haku's death. Gato and the mercenaries that he had brought with him took a step back in fear. Naruto took a step forward. And then disappeared. He reappeared right in front of one of the bandits, plunging his hand into the man's throat without preamble, impaling two of his fingers all the way through and out the back while seemingly not caring about the blood that was beginning to stain his hand. Rotating on his heel, he swung the corpse around, smashing it into 3 others, knocking them off balance before throwing it off and disappearing again. Naruto appeared behind another bandit and plunged both hands straight into his back and out his chest, palms facing away from each other. The man's screams filled the air before Naruto roared and ripped the man in half, letting the blood splash across his face only to be burnt off by the malevolent energy that only one person there could identify as the Kyuubi's Yoki. A moment later the whiskered blonde set his sights on the others that Gato had brought. The sounds of screams soon filled the air as Naruto tore through Gato's men, not just killing them, but brutally slaughtering them. Many had limbs torn off, arms, legs, heads, some of the men were even ripped to nothing more than chunks of flesh that could not be recognized as having ever been human. Naruto spared no one in his gruesome quest to massacre every single individual who had come with Gato. As far as he was concerned, they were all guilty of what happened to Haku, and none of them deserved any form of mercy or compassion. When Naruto had killed all of the bandits, he turned his eyes to Gato. Said man was currently curled up into a ball, somehow still conscious despite the overwhelming bloodlust and killing intent coming from the blonde, and began to stalk over to the sniveling little midget. "PP please, SS spare me." Gato begged as Naruto stopped in front of him. I'll GGIVYUUOU anything you want. Just let me go." The whiskered blonde stopped short at Gato's words and looked at him with a sort of absent curiosity, like a lion might look at an antelope that was pinned under its paws. For a moment Gato was not even sure the blonde would speak, as all Naruto was doing was staring at him. Finally, "Anything?" asked Naruto, his voice deep and guttural, no longer sounding human but taking on the pitch and timbre of something demonic in origin. "Yes, anything," Gato said enthusiastically, feeling certain he could buy off this demon, "just name it. Money, wealth, power, women. Anything at all." "Very well." Naruto tilted his head at the man, seemingly in thought of what he wanted. "I want you to bring Haku-chan back." Gato's eyes widened and his face paled. I can't do that." "No. A pity," Naruto said with a shrug before lifting the man by his throat. Gato gasped and latched onto the hand now holding his neck in a vice grip in an attempt to pull it off. He continued to beg and plead, telling Naruto of all the things he could give the blonde. "You know what I want, Gato?" The demonized Naruto asked, not expecting a response, and ended up squeezing Gato's throat even tighter so he could not get a response. "I want you, dead." Naruto reared back a clawed fist, before launching it forward grabbing onto Gato's face. The man screamed as the red chakra began to burn his face off, melting it like wax. With a roar of finality Naruto channeled the red chakra into his hand as he squeezed Gato's head, making the corrupt businessman's head explode in a shower of gore. Naruto dropped the now headless body unceremoniously as the red energy began to leave him. His transformation reversed, his eyes changed back to normal, his claws reverted and his canines shortened while his whiskers went back to their original state. With his mind now clear of the bloodlust that had taken over it, he looked at the devastation he had caused, then down to his hands, his eyes wide. Despite all the blood having been burnt off by the chakra, he could still see it on his hands. He could still remember what he had done, he could see how he had slaughtered all of the thugs Gato had brought and the man himself, and could recall everything he had done in picture-perfect clarity. "What have I done?" Naruto dropped down onto his knees and vomiting the entire contents of his stomach, as his stomach began to rebel. Even after he had finished, the whiskered blonde was still dry heaving, his mind and body both still feeling the overwhelming sense of nausea from what he had done. "There's that monster. You are not to go near that boy again. He's nothing but a monster in disguise. Demon. You are the Kyuubi no Kitsune." Naruto began to hyperventilate as the voices of the villagers washed over him. He tried shutting them out, but that only seemed to make the voices louder. He tried ignoring them, but the voices were not to be denied, and no matter how much he tried to tell himself otherwise, he began to feel disgust for what he had done. "Oh Kami, they're right, I'm nothing but a monster, a demon. Naruto." The blonde froze as a hand landed on his back. Looking up he saw Kakashi, his headband back over his Sharingan, looking at him in concern. Kakashi-sensei. He choked out, "Are the villagers right? Am I really a demon?" Kakashi's eye widened slightly before going back to its concerned look. "No Naruto, you are not a demon, do not think like that. What you are is a shinobi." "A shinobi?" Naruto asked unsurely, his eyes clouded and lost. Yes, Kakashi answered with a nod. But I killed all those people. Tears began to form in his eyes. They didn't stand a chance, I just tore through like they were paper. It was so easy, how can I be anything but a monster? How could anything other than a monster do those things? A shinobi, Kakashi replied, as a shinobi you will always be called upon to do things you may not like, things that, to a civilian would make you seem like a monster. This is the world we live in Naruto. It's what we signed up for when we became ninja, it's the same for me, and the same for Zabuza and his partner. Partner, Naruto's eyes widened as he jumped up, Haku. Kakashi watched as he ran back towards Haku's body and sighed, he was going to have to talk with Naruto soon. He's not going to be doing well after this. Dealing with the guilt of killing other people in such a violent manner, and using the Kyuubi's chakra to do it. No doubt his mind will be unstable for a while after this. He looked over where Naruto was now cradling Haku. And then there's that relationship, I'll definitely have to talk to him about that. I can only hope I or maybe the Hokage or Anko can help him through this. Naruto gently lifted Haku into his arms. Standing up and ignoring Zabuza who was watching him curiously, the blonde began to make his way off the bridge. The crowd that Inari had gathered to help had only arrived a few seconds ago to see the aftermath of the battle, could only part themselves for Naruto, staring at the blonde in shock as he walked right past them. Several hours after the battle, Naruto stared at the newly dug grave he had just made for Haku. It was in the small clearing the two of them had first met, and continued to meet for the rest of the week. The grave was not much. Naruto had used his fledgling wind ability to create a wind blade and carve out a tombstone for her. The cuts were jagged and uneven, and the writing was sloppy and showed that he had cut the writing out of the stone without the use of any kinds of tools. He promised himself he would get a better tombstone for her when he came back here to visit. His face was now set in an emotionless mask as he stared at the grave. Reaching a hand into his shirt, Naruto pulled out a small chain that was attached to his neck. Taking the chain off from around his neck, Naruto gazed at the centerpiece of the metal necklace. Attached to the chain was an odd green crystal that shined brilliantly as it was held in the middle of a snowflake. Haku had given it to him on their last night together. Flashback. Taking a deep breath, Naruto began to tell her something that no one in his age group knew. The day I was born, the Biju known as Kyuubi attacked my village. Many of our ninja forces had been killed, even a lot of our civilian population died. The Kyuubi attacked without warning, just appearing in the middle of our village before going on a rampage. Just when all hope seemed lost, the Yondaime Hokage arrived and, through the use of a powerful self-sacrificing jutsu, killed the Kyuubi. Haku looked up at him as he paused in curiosity, wondering where her companion was going with this. She knew of this story. It had been one of the few major incidents that had spread across the elemental nations, even reaching Kiri. At least, that is what the history books and our teachers taught us, but that story couldn't have been farther from the truth, Naruto said in a quiet voice. You see, the Kyuubi, like all Biju, was simply a mass of malevolent chakra with a conscience, and was the strongest of the 9. As such, the Kyuubi cannot be killed. He looked down at Haku to see her staring at him with wide eyes. The only way to defeat a Biju is to seal it. And the only thing that would work against something as strong as the Kyuubi is a person. Haku gasped as she continued listening. She already had an idea where this was going. However, she continued to listen, knowing that it would be better if he told her himself. Naruto plunged on, fearing that if he did not continue now, he would never be able to tell her, and so the Yondaime took a newborn baby, who had just had its umbilical cord cut, and used it to seal the demon. Just before he died, the Yondaime asked that the child be seen as the hero that protects Konoha each and every day by ensuring that the Kyuubi could never escape again. He paused for a second and took a deep breath. Suffice to say, the villagers did not honor his dying wish. From the moment the boy was born, he was treated like he was less than dirt. At the orphanage he was in, the matron refused to let him play with the other children, fearing that the monster would taint the others. He was only fed the scraps other children left after their meals once a day if he was lucky, once a week if he wasn't. And on his 5th birthday, they kicked him out. Closing his eyes, Naruto missed the tears that were already falling from Haku's eyes. For nearly a year this child lived on the streets, going through the garbage cans in order to find sustenance. On many occasions he would get tossed away from them by the people who owned the shops that used them, causing him to starve. He would live wherever he could, often in cardboard boxes and even living in the sewers of Konoha for several months just to stay warm during some of the colder seasons. It was only by chance that he happened to come upon a little ramen shop, and even more amazing luck, that the Hokage happened to be there. The Hokage, after hearing of what happened to this child, gave him an apartment of his own and a monthly stipend for his necessities and the utilities of the apartment. However, even then, it was not enough. The apartment owner could not raise the price high enough so he could not pay, but she did make it so that he was nearly broke all the time. Not that it would have mattered. The boy was unable to buy the bare necessities anyways. Shops would kick him out, or sell rotten goods to him. Clothing stores kicked him out or charged triple the price for nearly ruined clothes. And no matter where he went, people would either glare at him, or try to ignore his existence entirely. The boy also had no friends since parents had told their children to stay away from the boy, saying that he was dangerous and could not be trusted. Eventually, the parents' hatred was passed on to their children. Even when he went to the academy to become a ninja, it was no different. Teachers would yell at him when he tried to answer questions, or throw him out for trying to outdo clan heirs. Nothing he seemed to do helped improve his standing in class, and eventually the child turned to pranks, hoping it would get him the attention he wanted. A stifled sob and the feeling of a body pressing into his caused Naruto to stop his story. Looking down, he saw Haku crying into his shirt. Deciding that she knew enough, he stopped there and got to his point. I don't think I need to tell you who this child was. Haku shook her head as she looked up at him. I don't, Sniff, understand how anyone Sniff could do something like that to an innocent child with such a burden. It's because they don't understand, Naruto said quietly. Humans have always held a fear of the things they don't or can't understand, and when they fear something, the basic instinct of all humans is to lash out at it simply to prove that they don't fear it. You should know this better than anyone since the same thing that happened in Kiri. Still, Haku said as she placed her head on his shoulder, I don't know how you could handle something like that without breaking. And I don't know how you could deal with your parents' death, or the fact that you were forced to kill one of them without breaking, Naruto replied. I can handle it because I understand why they're doing it and want to change their opinions of me. Before I found out why, I had used my pranks and hid behind a goofy smile and upbeat attitude to deal with it. I guess I figured that if they were going to ignore me, or hate me, I would give them a reason to with my pranks. The whiskered blonde ran a hand through his hair and sighed. It wasn't until a traitor tricked me into stealing the forbidden scroll of sealing that I found out why. But now I do understand, and I'll make them change. I'll become Hokage and show everyone that I'm not the demon they think I am. Haku smiled as she looked up at him. You really are an amazing person, Naruto-kun, she said. Naruto blushed. Well, I'm not really all that special. Haku shook her head and smiled. You're just too modest to realize how amazing you are. Reaching into an inner pocket where she normally carried Sanbon, Haku pulled out a beautiful necklace with a green crystal being held in the center of a snowflake. My mother gave this to me, it was a family heirloom, she said. The raven-haired girl placed it in Naruto's hand and closed his fingers around it. I want you to have this. Naruto looked at Haku in shock. Looking down at the necklace, he shook his head. I can't take something that important from you. Haku smiled. You can't take something if it was given to you freely. Please have it, I want you to have it. But, I feel kind of bad, Naruto said, though he did end up putting the necklace in his pouch. I mean, I don't have anything of real value to give to you in return. I know one thing you can give me, Haku said with a small blush. Naruto tilted his head to the side quizzically as he looked at her. Really? What's th? Naruto was cut off and his eyes widened in shock when he felt a pair of warm, soft lips press against his own. His entire body froze in place, and it felt like someone had lit him up with the Amaterasu flames. Every single nerve ending felt like they had been hit with a Raiden Jutsu, causing him to stand ramrod straight. When she noticed Naruto was not responding, Haku pulled back and gave him a pout. You know, when someone kisses you, you're supposed to kiss back. That is to say and you, kiss, and Naruto tried, the red on his face increasing several shades. Haku sighed at how embarrassed and shocked the whiskered blonde looked. Even she knew how to kiss. Looks like this is something we're going to need to work on. Feeling that there was nothing left to be said, She claimed his mouth with her own, and even after Naruto started to respond their lips had remained locked. Flashback end. Naruto clenched the necklace in his hand as he tried not to let any of the emotions he had been feeling overtake him. He had never imagined that after everything he had been through in Konoha, there would be something else that would hurt even worse than his loneliness. Honestly, the thought that he could feel a pain more keen than he had felt in his home village, especially after learning why he was so hated, was almost laughable. He could no longer see any amusement in that lie of thought. So this is where you've been, brat. Naruto turned around as he heard the gruff voice to see Zabuza walking up to him. The whiskered blonde turned around, not really caring what the bandaged-faced man wanted, or that he could kill him if he so decided. What do you want? Naruto asked in a dull voice. Zabuza shrugged as he stopped next to the blonde. The others have been looking for you since you've left. He paused for a moment. Well, Kakashi and the people of Nami are. I think the pink-haired girl and that Uchiha kid are still unconscious. At least, they were when I left. Naruto said nothing as he turned around and looked back at the grave. For a while the two said nothing, choosing to simply stare at the small monument that the Konoha shinobi had created. You know, when I found Haku, she had really been nothing more than a scrawny little thing, Zabuza said after several minutes of silence. I had found her huddled up on a bridge with people walking past her, ignoring her existence like she wasn't even there. She had looked like she would keel over any moment. I'm sure that had I just left she would have died from starvation within a month's time. Despite that, I had felt there would be some kind of use for her, and so I took her with me, and trained her to be my weapon. Naruto's fists clenched even tighter and blood began to trickle from his palms as he heard about Haku training to be used as a weapon. He would not deny that a part of him blamed this man for Haku's death as well. After all, if he had never found her, she would have never died, at least not here. Still he did not speak, not feeling the desire to talk, and let the man continue unhindered. I trained her to be the best, and, in many ways, her abilities in combat had surpassed even mine. But the one thing she had never lost was her pure heart. Haku hated killing in every form. Even to this day she had never killed someone. She would always knock them out using pressure points in her senbn instead. Yet for some reason she stuck by me through everything, even when I killed. I had always told her that her mercy was a weakness, but no matter what happened she wouldn't kill. Zabuza sighed as he closed his eyes. Despite my disapproval of not killing an opponent, I couldn't bring myself to make her kill. Why are you telling me this? Whispered Naruto after several minutes of silence. Because kid, I have known Haku ever since she was little, Zabuza answered. I had trained and raised her for a long time. I saw her grow into the person she was, and watched as she grew in strength. Zabuza turned to look at Naruto. I have seen her at both her best and her worst. However, in all the years I've known her, I have never seen her as happy as she had been this past week, and I know she was like that because of you. Naruto let out a small stifled sob, but otherwise didn't react. This past week you made Haku happier than she had ever been, and for that I want to thank you. Naruto shook his head as he looked away from Zabuza. I don't deserve thanks. I betrayed Haku-chan's memory by going on a rampage and killing all those people. You said it yourself, she hated killing. Haku-chan would have never wanted me to do something like that. Zabuza snorted. Kid, I think Haku would understand. She had always been extremely understanding of others, and I've done far worse than what you did in my lifetime. She still accepted me. But, I killed all those people. I really am nothing more than a demon. Naruto bit the bottom of his lip to keep more tears from spilling out. Zabuza laughed at him. Gaki, I go by the title Kiri no Kijin. I have been called a demon ever since I slaughtered an entire graduating class in Kurigakure and earned my place in its shinobi ranks. So I think I would know a demon when I see one, and you are too soft-hearted to be a demon. Naruto looked at the man before turning back to the grave. I suppose you would know. Zabuza made a HMMING sound but did not say anything. For several more moments they stood in silence. Kid. Yeah? Asked Naruto. I want you to do me a favor, Zabuza said. Naruto frowned. What kind of favor? Well, two actually. Zabuza paused. I want you to always keep Haku close to your heart, make sure you never forget her. I see the same kindness and pure heart in you that I did in her, never lose that. You don't have to make that kind of request. Even if I wanted to I could never forget Haku-chan, not that I would want to. Naruto looked down at the necklace in his hand, and the other request. Find people who are important to you and protect them, Zabuza said simply. Haku had always believed that true strength came from protecting the people important and precious to them. I've become more inclined to believe her after today. I want you to find that source of strength that Haku cherished, something that I couldn't do until it was too late. Zabuza walked in front of the grave and planted his zanbeitu in the ground. Pausing for a moment before he turned around and began walking away, as he did, he passed a parting comment over his shoulder. My one regret was never telling Haku how much I loved her, that she was the daughter I never had. Do not make the same mistakes I did, or you'll live a life of regret. Naruto watched Zabuza leave before turning back to the grave and the sword now planted in front of it. Haku. The door to Tezuna's house opened and everyone looked to see Naruto walk in. Tezuna, Tsunami and Inari were all sitting on the large couch, while Kakashi was sitting in a chair with his book surprisingly absent. Naruto. Kakashi said as he stood up, are you feeling all right? Yeah, Naruto said, his eyes looking down at the floor. I'm fine sensei, sorry for worrying you. Kakashi walked over to Naruto and put a hand on the boy's shoulder. Listen Naruto, if you ever need to talk about anything. Naruto looked up at his sensei and smiled. Thanks sensei, but I'm feeling fine, really. Naruto ni-san. Inari shouted as he came bounding up to Naruto. Everyone's saying you're the one who defeated Gato on the bridge. Is it true? Naruto winced almost imperceptibly but put on a smile for Inari. The kid didn't need to know the gruesome details or how he hated what he had done. Yeah, it's true, he ruffled the kid's hair. I told you I'd send him packing. Sugoi. Inari said as he looked up at Naruto. That's so cool. I'm gonna train to get stronger just like my two-san and you Naruto ni-san. Naruto gave Inari a large smile. If you want to be as strong as I am one day then there is something very important you need to remember. What is it ni-san? Asked Inari. When a person has something important to protect, that's when they become truly strong. Haku. Naruto looked at Inari with a smile. It's only when a person has something important to protect, that's when they become truly strong. Remember that. Inari nodded enthusiastically. I will ni-san. Naruto ruffled Inari's hair one last time before looking up at Kakashi. So sensei, where are Sakura and Sasuke-tem? Sasuke has a bit of a concussion, so he's upstairs resting, Kakashi answered. Oh Sasuke-kun, let me help you fluff your pillow so you'll be more comfortable. Get away from me. Why won't you just leave me alone? Wait, Sasuke-kun, Kakashi-sensei said you shouldn't be moving right now. Naruto, Kakashi and everyone else in the room sweat dropped as several loud bangs and the pair's screams could be heard. Well, maybe he's not getting as much rest as I thought. Kakashi sweat dropped at hearing a particularly loud scream of, "Get the fuck away from me you crazy bitch," from Sasuke. Speaking of, you should probably get some rest too. The bridge should be finished by next week, until then we still have a job to do. Naruto nodded as he headed upstairs, then I'll see you tomorrow sensei. 1 week later. The passing week had been very hectic for the three genin. With Gato gone and the battle of the bridge having ended in victory only because of Naruto losing control of the Kyuubi, Kakashi had decided to start training them harder than before. He had started teaching Sasuke the water walking exercise since he had already gotten tree walking down. Sakura was still on tree climbing since her reserves were simply not large enough to use water walking. Both of them had been run slightly ragged by their Jonin sensei, Sasuke even more so since he now had his Sharingan, something he had taken to turning on and off every chance he got. For Naruto things had been even worse, though it was by his own doing rather than his sensei. He had taken his training to a whole new level, pushing himself far beyond anything he had ever done. To him, his time in Nami had shown him that he was too weak to protect the people he cared about. He felt that he should have been able to do something, anything that could have saved Haku. That feeling of guilt and the pain of loss was channeled into his training. Now instead of his usual 200 clones, he had summoned up 300 and began to make them work on further developing his fighting style. Naruto wanted to incorporate the use of high-speed attacks and fuinjutsu into his style. Hopefully it would give him an edge over others since fuinjutsu was an obscure art. However, it had been his physical training that Naruto had worked on the most. While he had not upped his training seals, he had nearly quadrupled his workout routine, and was often so exhausted and sore that one of his clones had to take him back to Tezuna's. Kakashi and Tezuna's family became somewhat worried for him when they would see a clone carrying his bloody and beaten form into the house, but he assured them that he was fine. Despite assuring everything that he was fine, Naruto knew the truth. He knew that each time he reassured someone when they were worrying over him after finding out he had his clones beat the crap out of him on a daily basis, that he was anything but fine. But he knew that he could not stop. The moment he stopped training, the memories he had made with Haku over this past week would come back. And each time they did, it felt like someone had taken a molten hot kunai and shoved in his heart. That was why he trained himself into the ground every day, the true reason he could not stop training. Why he came to Tezuna's home every night nearly unconscious. Because the moment he stopped, the pain he felt set in and he did not want to acknowledge the gaping feeling of loss he could now feel. So long as he kept busy, he could ignore it, so that's what he did. Another thing Naruto had done was talk to Tezuna about making an orphanage for the orphans he had found and helped. Tezuna along with a few others had helped Naruto build the orphanage. Of course all they did was get supplies. Naruto had used his ability to produce ungodly amounts of clones to build the orphanage himself. They had also managed to get a few people who were childless to help take care of the orphans when Naruto left. At the end of the week the bridge, with more help from Naruto's clones, had been completed. Now all of the people of Nami were there, not only to celebrate the completion of the bridge, but also to see off the heroes of Wave. Naruto in particular had been subjected to many looks and whispered mutterings much different the ones he received in Konoha. Unlike in Konoha where people would call him monster behind his back, or glare at him with hate-filled eyes. The people here were staring at him in awe. The whispers were about how strong he was, and how he had freed them from Gato. The first time he had been seen inside the city after the Battle of the Bridge as it was being called, had been an interesting and frightful experience for the young ninja. He almost understood what Sasuke had to suffer through during the academy while having to deal with a horde of fangirls proclaiming their love for him. Thankfully for the blonde it was not quite that bad. But ever since it had been made known that Naruto had been the one to kill Gato and his thugs, the people had been giving him looks of awe, and many of the girls would blush and giggle as he passed, tossing shy waves to him while a few of the bolder ones would try to get dates. One incident in particular, stuck within Naruto's mind. Flashback. Naruto was walking back to Tezuna's with said man and Kakashi after working on the bridge. As they did the blonde noticed many people staring at him, giving him odd looks with star-filled eyes and some of the women had hearts in their eyes. The look reminded him of the way Sasuke's fangirls looked whenever he passed them by and it was really starting to creep him out. The way they were talking about him did not help either. Is that who I think it is? They say he's the one who defeated Gato and his thugs single-handedly. Wow really? But he's so young. Who cares how young he is? He's so cute. Naruto tried his best to ignore the stares and whispers he was receiving, as he was not really sure how to handle them. In Konoha when people did this, the whispers were ones of hate, calling him names, talking about how he should have died and other hateful remarks. These were the exact opposite and because of that he had no clue how he should react. Excuse me. The three stopped and turned around to see a group of girls around Naruto's age standing behind them. Is it true that you're the one who beat Gato? Asked the girl in front, a girl with black hair and green eyes, wearing a light blue yukata. Well, I had help. Naruto finished lamely, a light blush staining his cheeks at the way the girls were eyeing him like a piece of meat. So it's true. Oh that's so amazing. You're like a hero. That seemed to break the floodgates as all of the girls began to crowd around him. Asking him what it was like to be a ninja, how powerful he was, if they could get a date, and one of them even asked if she could touch his whiskers. Throughout the entire exchange, Naruto just stood there frozen stiff with a look of shock and confusion on his face. While being with Anko, Tenten and the rest of Team 9 had helped him get a little better at socializing, he still had no clue what to do in a situation like this. It was fortunate that Tezuna and Kakashi were there to bail him out, grabbing him before running off or he likely would have died from embarrassment. Flashback end. Thanks to you four we have finally completed the bridge, but do you really have to go so soon? Tezuna said with a large smile as he placed a hand on a nearly tearing up Inari's head. They along with the entire population of Nami were standing next to the now completed bridge. This included the many girls who had tried to mob Naruto when he had been seen in public. Said blonde only took one glance at them to see the group holding up signs proclaiming their love for him before looking away with a shiver. Unfortunately, Kakashi replied with his book out as usual, Hokage-sama will want a report on what happened here as soon as possible. Naruto moved over to Inari. Kneeling down he ruffled the kid's hair and gave him a large grin, don't worry we'll be back to visit sometime. Inari sniffled as his eyes threatened to spill, promise. Grinning a little wider Naruto held his pinky out to the kid, promise of a lifetime. Inari looked at the pinky before bringing up his own and shaking with it. It's okay to cry if you're happy you know, Naruto commented as he noticed the kid looked ready to burst. As if on cue Inari smashed against Naruto, latching onto him and crying. In return Naruto just hugged the kid who had begun to call him Ni-san. Standing back up again Naruto gave them one final grin, we'll see you guys later, be sure to look after this place. And Inari, remember what I said. I will Ni-san. Inari promised. Then I guess this is goodbye, Kakashi said as he and the other ninja turned around. See ya later kid, Naruto said as he tossed a wave over his shoulder. Goodbye Naruto-kun, shouted the horde of girls that had shown up to see the blonde off, causing said blonde to freeze up in fear before walking just a tad faster. That boy, Tazuna said as he looked at the retreating figure of Naruto. That boy not only defeated Gato, but he changed Inari's heart, and Inari changed our people's hearts. Allowing us to build a bridge called Hope for our dying country. Oh yeah, speaking of the bridge, one of the people there said. What should we call it? Naruto. The entire group of the newly created Naruto fan club shouted. Tazuna had to hold in a wince from all the voices shouting at once, but it was not as bad as it would have been several weeks ago. He was now almost glad he had gotten used to someone whose screeches were louder than all of these girls combined. As his equilibrium and hearing came back he thought about the name for a second before laughing, the Great Naruto Bridge, it does have a nice ring to it, doesn't it? That does sound like a fitting name father, Tsunami said with a giggle. Yep. I have a feeling that name is gonna bring this bridge good luck, Tazuna stated as people began to cheer for the new bridge and the genin who made it all possible. Who knows, it may even bring other people good luck. Thank you for watching, please make sure to like and subscribe and have a great day.